Hello.
Hi, I'm just checking in to make sure I've got access here because I've not used Zoom from home. This is Sharon.
Oh, hi, Sharon.
How are you?
Fine, thanks. And you? How's the semester?
Busy and hectic, but good. And I'm happy and grateful to be healthy, so no complaints. How about yourself?
Oh, okay. So so the way that you do is you go on and open your program, your PowerPoint or whichever software you're using or whatever media you may be using,
Uh,
and then get that ready to go. And then when you do that, you see the share screen green button with the
yes.
arrow pointing up,
Yeah.
and then when you click on that, that's going to give you a whole bunch of windows. It's in a smaller frame, and then you click the frame that includes the particular item that you want to share, and then once you're done, you just stop sharing and then share something else.
Can
Yes.
I just try it real quick to see?
Yeah, sure,
I,
sure, sure. Let me stop sharing here so you can
okay.
see it. So bottom is a share screen. So
And
okay. Oh,
can you see how many, what, who, where, why?
I see everything, and this is where you click on slideshow,
Right.
and then that's going to start. Or you just if you're using Windows, you can press F5.
Okay.
But this is perfect. Looks good.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate you letting me test that out real quick.
Sure. How do you hear
Nice,
me? I'm
nice
sorry.
glamour photo.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
I've already joined the Geezer squad since then. This is
Okay.
my 10th year working with the band book. So I think that must have been when I was coming to the university, and Dan Miller just caught me at the time when I was really unshaved and not
That
presentable.
that's the only he took the only existing halfway decent picture of me. So I'm forever grateful to that guy for managing to get a good picture. Well, I'm gonna stay connected, but I'm gonna mute and finish working on my thing here. So thanks a lot for letting me jump in and try. I'm gonna kind of listen with one ear as I finish my presentation.
Sure. Okay. See you later.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Sure, Sharon. Bye bye. Hello. And hi, Moji. How are you? Hello.
Hello there. Thank you for hosting us today.
Sure, we are starting in just a few minutes. I'm waiting for Paulette to enter the room, and some of us are already here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it.
Which department are you in?
I am in the communication department
Oh,
at
okay.
Slippery Rock University in Pennsylvania. So I'm actually a remote colleague invited to join you today. So I'm really excited about that.
Welcome virtual to Toledo.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Paulette is in.
I can't hear you, Paulette. I think you're on mute there.
Yeah, can you unmute yourself? Oh, okay, now she's.
There she is.
There we are. So Emoji Zola's here.
Yeah.
Good morning, all.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi, Katrina. Welcome, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today.
Hello, I'm here too, but I'm invisible.
And Gigi's here as well.
Hi,
So,
Gigi.
Hello, everyone.
good morning. So that's
Sharon.
we have
Hi, Arjun.
Hi, Moji. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Fine, thank you.
Yeah, it's the last day, and it's going to be the best day.
yes, it is. It will indeed. I always say BAM Books is the best day of the whole year. Well, we've had
Yes.
4 best days of the whole year this year. We're having the last one right now.
It's exciting to be able to join you this time because thanks to our unusual semester. There's some advantages, I guess, right?
That's true, Katrina. I'm so very pleased that you're here.
Oh,
That's really nice. That's just awesome. It's when you can be supported by your friends, that makes a big difference.
well, you have quite an agenda too. So it's very enticing to be able to just jump onto a Zoom call and hear some of your speakers this week.
Yeah,
Okay, let me do a sound check here just for the video, so that we don't have the same issue yesterday. Do you hear everything?
Mm.
we're
No?
not hearing him.
Arjun, do you have earphones in or a mic
I'm sorry.
jack? Do you have a microphone or earphone jack in? We had the same issue with a meeting I was in just yesterday.
Well, I have a microphone, USB microphone,
Oh,
but this is supposed to be fed off the thing. I can unmute. I mean, I can mute my microphone, but
Did you hit the little button? Well, this isn't Vimeo, so maybe it doesn't have the same thing. Yesterday, when we opened it, we had to get it so it was on play. The audio was on. But who can say with you doing a YouTube, it's a nice clear image. That's good. If we can just get the sound to work, we'll be great.
oh, okay. So let me look at the
There's settings here.
same as.
So everybody, glad to see you. It's a sunny day here in Toledo this morning.
Paulette, you got wonderful media coverage. Did you see the piece on Channel 13?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Good. Yeah, great interview. It was a really good.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. You know, she didn't even need to talk to me. She did such a good job of saying what we were doing and why we were doing it and how to get to us. And then at the end, she got a comment from me, which was nice of her, but I was really impressed with her story. I thought she did a really nice job. Because
So it's not showing anything here. What am I supposed to? What did we do the last time?
there was
yesterday?
as you opened it on Vimeo, there was a button you could press to access. So maybe shut it. And then
when you share screen,
Yeah.
when you click on that, it should take you to a window, and below you would see on the left hand side
Oh, share computer sound. Okay, that's what I was missing. Okay. So.
Hi,
so
everybody.
hi, good morning, Smith.
Do you hear this now?
With the unusual title of 1984.
Do you hear this now?
Yes,
And
now we hear him.
the title of my talk is
Yes.
The Long Shadow of
Okay,
the
I'm gonna
Orwellian
restart
Ministry.
then.
Thank you.
Thank you for bearing with me. Yeah.
Yeah, we are hoping that he will join us on Zoom
Mm-hmm.
so we can have question and answers with him. And Facebook and YouTube are up and going.
Yes, they are up and going, and I have all the videos up till yesterday afternoon. We got everything up
Wow.
to now. So
Bravo.
just have today's video that's gonna come up next week, because this is a longer video and
Yeah,
it's gonna take Zoom to produce a lot longer than it will be. They're gonna close the library before Zoom is gonna be finished with the recording.
this is what we've been doing. We have been recording the sessions. We've got 4 recordings, and then Arjun is taking one, and he's putting it in pieces so that people can just watch that particular event. And then I was poking around on Facebook, and they have the whole string of them in one place on Facebook too. So, and we are getting some views on Facebook. We had over 154 for the first one we did on Monday. So
Wow, great.
it's exciting about social media. Now, I think we are going to start.
Okay, would you like to introduce Dr.
No,
Abdul
I want
Hussain?
to say a couple things first.
Oh, okay,
And then you
okay.
can introduce him, Arjun.
Well, you know more about his background, so.
Well, welcome to the 23rd annual UT Banned Books Week Vigil. And we call it a vigil because the fight for the First Amendment isn't ever over. And so we must remain watchful. We think that it's the very best day of the whole year. We just love bringing together people who can tell us about all sorts of issues involving censorship and freedom of expression. It's also a day for just thinking about the profound joy that reading brings to our lives. Not everyone in the world is even educated enough to be able to read, although reading should be part of our human rights. And so as we started our first day and as we end our last day, go books. Read
Go
on.
books.
Give every book a chance. And I would like to acknowledge the committee who helped. We worked really hard to get all these platforms up and running, and Arjun Saberhal has put in many, many hours on editing and making sure that our videos are working. And Ali Imami has also done just tremendous work for us in keeping all of our networks going. He's our network man. I'm not quite sure I know what that means, but we have one, which is probably a very good thing. I would also like to thank Sumitra Srinivasan, and she's done all kinds of stuff to help, including some tech stuff. And then one of my former students, Laura Mitchell, who has been with us quite a while, and she also has helped in lots of different ways. And Sadia Farouk, and she's here from Pakistan with her husband, who is finishing a medical degree at UT. And when I first met her in 2013, she took my ethics class, was able to publish some of the papers she wrote for me in ethics class. So she's a sharp cookie, and she's been just lots of help to us. We are so very lucky to have these people. And we have another one, Josie Schreiber, but she's taking care of her children. They're under 3 years old. So in a year or two, she'll be back when they're a little bit bigger. But I wanted to, before we did anything else, express thank you. And then we have Mojisola Tiamiu, Dr. Tiamiu from psychology. She is my dear friend, and every year she takes around the attendance book and makes sure people sign so we know how many were there. She's a great supporter. She also buys books for us to give away. So, rah, rah, Moji.
Rah, rah.
And this, on our very last day of presenting, I would again say that the fight for the First Amendment is never over. And I'm just delighted that you are here with us so we can learn some ways to keep our rights. And we can learn about some issues in censorship that maybe we weren't aware of before. And so, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Now, Dr. Syed Amjad Hussain is a legend in our town. He's both a medical doctor and a professor of humanities. He has numerous degrees. He's contributed in all kinds of ways to our community. He speaks frequently in the area He's very well published, and we are extremely happy to be able to present his comments. We sent him to the studio and had it recorded because he felt that that would be his best bet for doing this kind of a talk. And so I want to thank John Eidemeyer for his work too in making this video we're going to watch in a moment possible. So I don't see Dr. Hussain in the Zoom room yet. When the talk starts, I will email him and remind him we'd like him to pop in so we can ask him some questions. And so Arjun, would you like to put up the video and we could watch?
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks for your help with the video, Sumitra. And let's go. So now this should be, okay, share computer sound. I need to make sure. Okay, so here it is.
Professor Paulette Kilmer, members of the Banned Books Committee. I'm grateful for the opportunity to add my voice against censorship and banning of the books. I have borrowed the title of my talk from George Orwell's novel with the unusual title of 1984. And the title of my talk is The Long Shadow of the Orwellian Ministry of Truth. The book, 1984, centers around the consequences of totalitarianism, mass surveillance, and the repressive regimentation of societies. While the novel points in an allegorical way to Stalin's Russia, it also examines the role of truth or lack thereof in a society. The Ministry of Truth makes sure the past is manipulated to the degree with the present. Basic elements of thought control, as in the book, have been constant throughout history. It may vary in tactics, but intolerance of spoken or printed word remains constant. The common denominator is that some people just don't tolerate what other people have to say, and vice versa. To some, it may come as a surprise that many of the classics of English literature were one time or the other were banned and banished from the public arena. And these included Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, George Orwell's 1984, and also Animal House, J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye, William Golding's Lord of the Flies, Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath, and many, many more, perhaps in the thousands of books which were at one time banished. I hasten to add that history of opposition to spoken and written word can be put in context with the current political climate in the United States. The reputable and venerable news organizations and newspapers are being accused of disseminating false and fake news. So much so that even recorded words of the president are being discredited by none other than the president himself as fake news. Bob Woodward, the veteran Washington Post reporter, interviewed President Trump about 20 times and recorded the interviews with the president's permission and consent. His book, Rage, should induce rage in those who believe in the sanctity of words and truth. Recorded conversations do not seem to matter because the present-day Ministry of Truth, otherwise known as Fox News, OAN, or One America Network, and InfoWars are quite capable of producing rabbits from an otherwise fictitious and non-existing hat. In a macabre twist, we are reliving Orwellian's 1984 in 2020. Mark Twain had famously said that censorship is telling a man he cannot have a steak because a baby cannot chew it. If we applied that reasoning, then we would be applying a cookie-cutter approach to human behavior, and in the process, we will forget that standards and mores change with time. In 1933, a bizarre legal case, the United States versus one book called Ulysses. Now, that is the title of the case. The US Supreme Court found that book was utterly without redeeming social importance. This was because the book dealt with nudity. Looking from the present vantage point, it is a sad reminder that how men of high intellect and high places can err so easily. But we must take into account changing attitudes with the passage of time. The gradual process of change makes palatable what once was considered unpalatable. In 1928, D.H. Lawrence published his seminal and incendiary novel, Lady Chatterley's Lover, not in his native England, but first in Italy and then in France. The book was promptly banned when published in England in 1960, and the ban was lifted many years later. The novel tells in graphic details sexual encounters between Lady Chatterley, an English woman of high status, and the gamekeeper on her husband's estate. Her husband, a wealthy landowner, is paralyzed from the waist down, is self-absorbed in his books and in his estate. Explicit sex scenes aside, the novel underlines a young woman's unfulfilled desires and frustrations. That book brought forth the hitherto taboo topic of female sexuality. On a visit to Afghanistan in 2000, during the Taliban rule, I saw a copy of Lady Chatterley's Lover on a sidewalk stall in Kabul, where they sell old books and other second-hand items. The shopkeeper did not have any idea of the nature of the book. Had the Taliban been a literate group, they would have thrown the poor bookseller into the dungeon and would have burned the book. The Taliban practiced censorship where only the leaders and the clergy determined what was good for their people. Every human activity was viewed through the narrow prism of religion and tribalism. In Afghanistan, under the Taliban rule, the Orwellian Ministry of Truth was called the Ministry of Enjoining Good and Abandoning Evil. It was a line lifted from the Quran, Ya'muruna bil ma'ruf wa yanha 'anil munkar. The trouble was, the Taliban, a marginally educated bunch, had a limited worldview, and they interpreted the scripture in such a way that reinforced their own prejudices. Thus, they became the final arbiters of good and evil in the country during their rule. Incidentally, I leafed through Lady Chatterley's Lover on the sidewalk in Kabul and did not find it too hot to touch. Since its publication in 1928, it had considerably cooled down. In 1258, the Mongol ruler Hulagu Khan, who was the grandson of Genghis Khan, attacked Baghdad, the capital of the Abbasid dynasty. History has not forgiven Hulagu, not because he put to sword the Caliph Musta'sim and 90,000 residents of the city, but because he destroyed the magnificent library of Baghdad called the House of Wisdom and dumped all its contents in the river Tigris. According to contemporary accounts, the waters of the river Tigris ran black from the dissolving ink. So the struggle between what people should read and not read in America started in the started in America, and for that matter in the Western world, with the banning of Thomas Morton's New England Canaan. It was a 3-volume critique of the Puritans in New England, their atrocities against the Native Americans, and their eagerness to grab their land and resources. Morton refers to New England as the land of Canaan, or in Arabic, Canaan, the promised land of the Bible. The book was promptly banned by the Puritans in 1637, and the author banished to a deserted island. Morton's memorable quote about the banning of his book was that the Puritans make great show of religion but no humanity. I have already mentioned that the boundaries between what is acceptable and what is not keep changing with time. What was once incendiary or indecent may not be so now. This leads us to the logical conclusion that we are marching towards a goal of tolerance for the spoken and written word. The reasoning goes that man has become more enlightened and the darkness has been slowly dissipating. That would be, in my mind, an illogical conclusion. For the ground realities contradict that sweeping conclusion. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution has been constantly attacked by the fundamentalist Christians. Their worldview is at variance with the scientific evidence. They believe the Bible to be the true word of God, and anything that does not agree with it has to be rejected as false. In 2005, the school board in Dover, Pennsylvania, approved teaching intelligent design as an alternate theory to evolution. It was challenged in the federal court in Johnson City. The judge, John Jones, ruled against teaching of intelligent design as a scientific theory. So one would think that after 1925 Scopes trial, popularly called the monkey trial, the matter was settled once and for all, but it was not. Poor Darwin is still being challenged by the self-righteous crowd 171 years after the publication in 1859 of his seminal Origin of Species. So there is a question that begs for an answer. Do people who support banning of the books have any credibility? The answer is a short but an emphatic yes. They do have credibility. We are all driven by certain beliefs, convictions, and philosophies that directly contradict what others believe in. And we are oblivious to our own prejudices. In 1988, Salman Rushdie published Satanic Verses. In the book, Rushdie caricatured Prophet Muhammad and his wives. There were violent demonstrations against the author and his book across the Muslim world. Iran issued an edict or fatwa condemning the author to death. Not many people know that Prophet Muhammad is deeply revered by Muslims. So any attempt to insult him are deeply offensive to them. I read the book, and while I was impressed by Rushdie's writing, I was deeply offended by his clumsy attempts to malign the Prophet. But still, I would not stand for banning that book. In the public arena, everyone has the right and a duty to pick up his or her bullhorn and say whatever they want to say. At times, there is no clear-cut demarcation to separate facts from fiction, truth from falsehood, or logic from illogic. Permit me to quote Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to make this point. In the short story, The Empty House, Sherlock Holmes says to Watson, "Oh, my dear Watson, there we come into those realms of conjecture where the most logical mind may be at fault. Each may form his own hypothesis upon the present evidence, and yours is likely to be correct as mine." In a civil and civilized society, we are not expected to use violence to force our opinions on others. We try to persuade, and if that does not work, we pick up the proverbial bullhorn and protest. In a marketplace of ideas, everyone has the right to participate and disagree. We will never reach the utopian state where everyone agrees with each other. My wish is that we never do. That would be a dystopian society as depicted in the book 1984. It happened in the Soviet Union and the Soviet bloc Eastern European countries. It happened in the Taliban run Afghanistan. It is true of China today and most of the Arab monarchies. In a democratic society, differences of opinion are healthy and should be encouraged. So, in a way, I am encouraged that there are people in our country and across the world who want to force their views on others. And there are people who are resisting that with all their intellectual might. A noisy, boisterous public square is much better and healthy than a quiet, placid, and mostly deserted public square. Just look at the Tiananmen Square in Beijing. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amjad. Now, I have a slight problem with the technology. You have all disappeared. Jeez,
We can see you. I can see you.
I can't see a thing. You're all gone.
Okay.
Try
And
the
so-
good old escape button on the keyboard.
Try the escape button.
Yeah, it happened yesterday too, but I stopped the sharing, so I don't know.
I just can't see you guys at all.
Are you within Zoom? Can you tell?
I can't tell
Sorry?
anything. I've been thrown off, or at least all my visual is gone.
Do
Very
you want to
disturbing.
Click.
Well, nothing is sharing on my end. I see everybody.
come
But
out and
somebody
then
else
maybe
is-
log in again, come in
Well,
again?
I can't even do that.
Maybe Paulette, you could, oh, did we lose her? Maybe.
Paulette, you're muted, Paulette. Your mic's muted.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Paulette, maybe you could click the Zoom icon on the very bottom part of your computer screen.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Does that help?
Well, I don't seem to have a Zoom icon. I have a Finder and Siri.
So
But I
she's
don't-
probably launching it from
Hi,
her
Rebecca.
browser.
There we go. Now I can
Web
see you
and
guys
save it on my-
again.
Okay.
And I'm viewing Arjun's shared screen, but I don't have
Okay.
any control panel. How do I get my control panel back?
Do you see all of us, Paulette?
I see all of you, great.
Okay.
Glad
Yay.
to see you, but I don't have my control panel at all.
But it should be either on the top or on the bottom for you. So if you just
Oh, all I've got is your pictures, which are lovely. But I kind of.
okay, let me stop
nice if
sharing
I
that.
had-
Okay. Do you see me? Do you see us now?
Now I see the chat. Oh, there it
Okay.
is. Well,
Okay,
it
good.
was. There we go. All right. So and Dr. Hussein is with us this morning. Would anybody like to ask any questions? I really enjoyed that talk very much. Would somebody like to ask a question?
There's a question
Yes,
there.
Sharon.
Thanks for the interesting talk, Dr. Hussein. I'm going to ask you a question that I've been asking myself and is going to appear in my presentation as well, and I wonder how you'll respond. I'm struggling with that support for the idea that you hate, and how we respect that people's right to say things that we hate. And in particular, at this moment, I'm struggling with white supremacy and how I can make space for opinions that I find so not only hateful, but harmful to other people. Is there a space in your analysis where you say that speech is too harmful to others, that it like you're an anti-violent person, so you would not promote violence? Can speech be a hate act in your opinion? Unmute yourself too, of course.
Try the microphone here.
No, on mute.
There is a mic at the bottom. You just have to click it, Dr. Amjad.
Yeah, there's an image of a microphone in the corner of your screen. Your screen, you're muted right now. If you click on that microphone, looks like you're still muted. There you go.
Okay, yeah, you're good.
Okay, so the question is whether the speech can be hateful. Yes, of course. But here is a very fine distinction in my mind, and that is whether we should take things in our own hand and try to stop that speech, or we should rely on the laws which we have against insightful and hateful speech. That is a protracted and sometimes long process, and which nobody likes. However, short of that, I don't think that I have the right to tell somebody to shut up and stop talking, because then the same thing would be applicable to me. So I know white supremacist has as much right to protest or to say whatever they want to say, and that is extremely painful to other people. I think in this connection, the government and the laws that we have to come into play and to make decisions whether they should allow a free speech to certain groups or not. I am not going to advocate one way or the other.
Would someone?
Can I follow up a little bit?
Sure.
I'm blowing my whole presentation conclusion right now.
I'm recording it.
Oh, great. This question really came to me because I had a conversation with the late Rain Arroyo, who was a faculty member here, and we both identify as members of the LGBT community. And one year during the Banned Books Week, the student union was flying the gay pride flag over the student union and posted it up big on the wall. And he and I, being of a different generation, were both remarking about what an amazing thrill it was for us to see a public affirmation and celebration of our identity by the institution that we both work for, serve, etc. And but we were thinking about it in terms of the context of the banned books. And I said, well, what if it were the, old Dixie flag? How would we stand firm in our celebration of the right of freedom of speech? And we were trying hard to find a way to say, no, it would not be okay for the institution to support that value. It's okay for them to support our value, even though we know our identities are hated by people. And I think I'm trying to find a little room to say, no, the institution does not have to support all speech. And as an institution, it does not have to do that. So that's the background. I wonder if you want to comment on that or if you have thoughts about that.
Well, I think it's every institution has the right to say no. But beyond the institution, there is another code, and that is the laws. I mean, university can tell me that I should not talk as a faculty member. What recourse do I have? Recourse is to go to the court of law and knock their door and ask them, am I being closed, just stop from expressing my views? This is not a new debate. This has been with us in one form or the other ever since the modern American institutions have been in play. So I see a lot of things on the university campus I don't like, but as a former board member and a current faculty member, I don't have the right to tell them. Now, I will engage some people in intellectual conversation and tell them I do not like what my views are, but that seldom happens. But, you know, the next step is when you tell somebody to shut up is a escalation of this conversation, which conversation becomes a brawl. And I don't think that we should encourage that. But I will again emphasize that we have laws against hateful speech. And the law sometimes is blind and sometimes is totally blind. May I share with you an anecdote? This is about 7-8 years ago. Somebody took upon himself to start sending me emails. They were insulting emails, but that is good. No, not everybody has to agree with my views in my writings in the Blade or other newspapers. But when he started sending me emails saying that you are in my crosshair and there's going to be a turkey shoot. So I reported that to the sheriff and they said, no, this is beyond a freedom of speech. So they sued him in the court of law in Maumee. And the judge was totally blind, I think. And his verdict was, and I'm paraphrasing, even though he is a no good son of a blah, 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 but he has the right. Does he have the right to threaten me as a turkey shoot? No, he doesn't. Does he have right to tell me a bastard or whatever he wants to tell me because of my views? Yes, he has the right. So sometimes the law also misreads what the intention of a certain person is. This is my personal story. It happened with me.
Mochi would like to say something.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Hussain, for a very enlightening presentation. You mentioned so many points for us to ponder. At least for me, there were many. But I just want to find out your comments about one of the points. You gave us, you let us know that, and I do know too, that throughout history, that people use scriptures to more or less, is Dr. Hussain there?
Yes, I'm listening to you.
Okay. The use of scriptures by folks to reinforce our prejudices. And it seems as if more recently than even in the past, it's getting worse in terms of having family confrontations or disagreements and maybe even with friends. So I wanted to find out from you if your own way or your advice in terms of how one can have an engaging discussion, trying to demystify or at least as it relates to the use of scriptures, because again, if families, there are some families, I was born in Nigeria, and some families we have both Muslim and Christian individuals. And sometimes at the family table, there could be a problem. Would it be better not to discuss religion and even our attitude towards things? Or do you think it's still important that we engage in some form of discussion? And how can we do that so that we all agree to disagree or disagree to agree at the end of the day?
Well, religion is a very hot topic. You know, Lady Chatterley's lover has cooled down, but the religious scriptures have not. They're still very hot. And people who believe in them, literally, that is the only point of view they have. And so when suppose I gave a presentation somewhere and somebody will stop and he says, I don't agree with you because it is not in the Bible, or it is not in the Quran. And I tell them, if you go to a court of law internationally, then all the individual countries, they don't have a law to argue. They have an international law to argue. And if you and I are going to talk about this issue, then I will have to leave my scripture outside and you have to leave your scripture outside, because we will never agree because of the contradictions which are inherent between different faiths. We can find common ground. But anyway, no, I will engage people, but I will engage them only to learn and inform, rather than to prove that I'm right and I have a wonderful recipe for you. And that's why I am intellectually against proselytization. I don't believe in that, although my religion does, Christianity does, but I don't believe in going people and telling them, you know, I have something fantastic for you. I'm still struggling with my own faith and to understand. It takes a lifetime. And how can I tell you or anybody else that come to me and I'll show you the path? No. So I don't engage people who are firebrand and have already ideas, but if somebody asks me a question, I will try to answer it. And similarly, I will learn from other people.
Thank you.
So is there any activity with questions from the social media?
Well, there's
Well,
Nothing yet on YouTube.
on
Yeah.
Facebook, Heidi is saying great words, Amjad.
Sorry?
There's this person, it's Heidi M. Apple.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
the Dean of Honors.
One of my most favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. So the comment is great words, Amjad.
Comment is what?
Great words, Amjad. He really liked your presentation.
Oh, yeah. She is the Dean of the Honors College.
A
Yeah.
Isn't
great
that?
friend of this event.
I mean, she's the Dean of the Commerce College. She's a wonderful lady. I have spoken to her college a few times. Yeah, and I'm grateful, Heidi, if you're listening, I'm grateful for your comments. Thank you.
So, Symmetra, do we have any comments from YouTube or questions?
Nothing on YouTube yet.
Okay. Would somebody else like to ask Dr. Hussain a question here?
Sure.
We have a little bit of lag with the social media. I'm very proud of Arjun and Ali and Symmetra for getting all three of them going. So it's not a criticism, it's just the way the technology works.
Okay, so Dr. Yasmin Pervez on Facebook is saying beautiful advice and words by Dr. Hussain. Always learned from him. There are comments coming and there is no question, but yeah, people are commenting.
Well, this is good. This is good. This question always is there, isn't it? how do we talk to people we really disagree with? So
Paulette, I think a conversation only happens when two people feel equal to each other. If one is standing on a pedestal and the other is down, no, there is no conversation. It is condescending dialogue. And for that reason, I mentioned this earlier, is I don't think anybody has God-given right to feel superior to another person. I mean, really, because you are negating somebody's humanity by saying, I'm better than you are.
yeah.
So if we have that common denominator, that we are all equal, and our ideas may be stupid of anybody's, but that does not mean that we can belittle somebody. And that is the essence of a civil discourse in any society or any community. When people get very hot under the collar, have you ever seen anything resolved when there are people shouting at each other? Never. It doesn't happen. Because everybody hears the echoes of their own voices. It's an echo chamber. You have to get out of the echo chamber to talk to each other. So I'm all for dialogue, but I'm all for dialogue in a very calm and reasoned fashion. Otherwise, it becomes a shouting match. And I personally, I will not engage in that, except with my children. I mean, that's different.
It looks like there's a question from Facebook, which is posted in the chat here. Heidi M. Apple, the Dean of Honors, she says, I think humans have always lived in an age of intolerance. Is today any different?
I don't think so. However, just because we're having this conversation is positive, right? This has been the hallmark of human beings, to disagree, to shout, and then violence. Yeah, those are the three steps. They may not escalate to the same level from point A to point Z, but this happens. And that's where the institutions, that's where you, Heidi, as a teacher, and I, as a teacher, we should come into play. I think we should set an example. I'm trying to set an example to the students and to have a dialogue. You can teach anything controversial in the classroom without taking a position or a side, because the students have to learn how to talk, how to converse with each other. And the whole life is not really, it's easy. It's full of booby traps and full of landmines, and our job as teachers is to prepare a generation of students to be tolerant to each other. Let me bring one other point, and that is when somebody says you should tolerate other people, and it's true mostly in terms of religion. And I said, no. To tolerate is a negative word. You don't say that I live in a beautiful neighborhood and I tolerate my neighbors. No, you accept your neighbors. So when a Christian, when a Catholic tells me that he accepts me, he is not diminishing his Christianity. And if I tell a Hindu that I accept you, I am not diminishing my faith, Islam, as we understand it. So we should accept each other without losing our own individual religious identity. No, that is the point where I fight on, and that is, no, don't tell me that we should tolerate each other. No, this is a negative term in my dictionary. I think I've spoken more than I should.
No, you're the speaker. It's your job to speak. In fact, But we do see what a difference it makes when we regard each other with respect and dignity. And when in a conversation, instead of planning what we are going to say next, we actually listen to the other person.
Right. I think this is a very common thing that when somebody's talking, other people are already thinking of what argument they're going to put forward without even listening as to what person has to say. I think most of us suffer from that weakness. Yeah. And honestly, I keep coming back to classroom. I think the university and the colleges are the places where we teach that to the students. This is our responsibility.
Do we have another question or comment? Anything from social media?
We have a comment from Sharon Barnes in Zoom. She says, my trouble is with people whose value is intolerance. I have trouble accepting intolerance.
I would say that to a loud amen. A loud amen.
I have another question, Dr. Hussain.
Are we allowed, Paulette? How many questions are we allowed each person?
Oh, I don't. This is
Okay, I'm okay.
Freedom of expression event.
One and a half, two and a half. No, please go ahead.
Well, the whole idea was maybe it will spur others to ask questions. Otherwise, I can wait and ask this.
Go ahead and ask. You're on right now.
No, please.
Yes. So, Dr. Hussain, it's back again. I'm thinking of our young children and even grandchildren. What advice would you have for parents, grandparents, with all that's going on, particularly lately in terms of politics, assuming you are watching the TV with them, for instance, watching the first debate, presidential nominees debate. How can we explain what's going on to them when they see adults interact the way they interact? Although I'm a professor of psychology, I would still want to hear your view on that.
I don't have any views. I have views which are very dear to me, and I keep them close to my heart. But how to tell children? I will tell them that this is not what you want to be when you grow up. Really. I mean, I mentioned in the beginning of my keynote that when the facts becomes non-facts and all that thing, this has been going on with us. And I think we have a responsibility to not shield children, but to make them aware and to make them understand. Yeah, I know I don't have any magic formula beyond that. And thank God my children are grown.
Well, we are almost to 1 o'clock, so maybe now I should say one more question. Does anybody have one more question? Does anybody have one more comment? Yes, Sadia.
So my question is that, like you said earlier, that you cannot stop everyone from talking, like as we were talking about white supremacists earlier. So what should we do with the trauma that comes with it? Like, I mean, like, if you're letting some people talk openly and freely because they have a right to talk, but it's also giving a trauma, and it's also like developing a fear in a small or marginalized groups, and we have to live with those groups. I'm sorry. Yes, Mana.
Well, pick her up and just put her in your...
She don't want me. She want me to change her cartoons. She don't need mother. She need iPad.
Like mother, like daughter. Go ahead.
So, I mean, I feel like that there is this hidden fear which is seeding so deep into our souls that while teaching our kids that you don't want to be that person when you grow up, but you're not sure or certain about the future of your kids and your future because you kind of have started living in that unknown fear. So I have no idea how to deal with that fear, and that fear that's like rooting in, and what if I'll transfer that fear to my kids too, while letting them know that everyone has a right to talk freely, even if it's like threatening for you.
But I mentioned that a few questions back, Sadia, and I mentioned this thing. Yes, some speech is undesirable, unpalatable. And I think there should be some laws governing that. So the difference between what is permissible and what is absolutely not permissible, maybe the distance may be very big between these two. We just have to live with it, because what is the opposite of that? Suppose if you had the power to shut somebody up. I don't want to have that power. Now, I have imagined in my head that if somebody is really abusing me or somebody that I love or whatever, that how could I shut them up? But I have to subordinate those ideas to other facts of life. Yes, whenever there was a controversial decision, controversial publication, there was always this thing to shut this up. And the history is replete with examples of people taking and saying things which other people did not like. But somehow, that in the long run, look at the Pentagon Papers. Didn't the US government put all its might to stop New York Times from publishing it? They were published. And what happened? We found out a lot more about the war in Vietnam than we were led to believe. It's a double-edged sword. And I think we as citizens have to be cognizant, and we have to live with it. And we have to play our own part. Every one of us has the obligation to play some kind of a part. Just because we're having this conversation, I think is healthy and positive. So I gave you a non-answer to your beautiful question.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hussain. Thank you, Sadia.
Okay, my pleasure. So you are going to, 1 o'clock is the beginning of this program?
In just a second, I always identify what we're doing because people may be tuning in.
Yeah, they're tuning. Some of them are tuning in from Pakistan.
That's right. We had Sumitra's father from India.
Yeah.
Watched some of it. I was so pleased to see that.
It's 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
In Pakistan and parts of India. Yeah, 10 o'clock at night.
So bravo. And they can watch the recordings too, because the recordings will be up. I'm amazed Arjun got the ones from yesterday up, but I'm very pleased because then that keeps it right close to the time when we did it. So, my lovelies, welcome. This is the 23rd annual UT Banned Books Week Vigil. And I am Professor Paulette D. Kilmer, Dr. K to my students. I'm in the communication department, and it is my joy to welcome all of you to our celebration of the right to read and think freely. A right that for us is automatic and sadly is not for people in other places in the world.
she's going to introduce me, and then she's going to put that video. So I'm
if
going at
you,
I want to see the video.
if you know people who would like to watch us later, we are posting recordings. The recordings from today will go up on Monday because it will take Zoom a while. We have four presentations, all of them great today for you. Plus, I need to give the students a code word so they can get credit for attendance. The code word is the giver, the Lois Lowry book. So that's the code word. When you go in there and sign up for your attendance, and please put the professor whose class you're in, not my name, not Dr. Hussein's, but we want to send your professor an email saying you attended. And we can't do that if you don't identify the professor you want the extra credit from. This is our first virtual adventure. And I tell you, when I read a book, it takes me to destinations of the soul that I can't access any other way. Long live the book!
Long live the book.
When we're in a room, I do chairs and I spell out the letters for stuff, but I can't really do that online. So we're modifying some chairs. I'm going to give away some prizes in a moment. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. And we would like to give a shout out to our brilliant, marvelous provost. Go Provost! The
Go Provost!
Huge supporter and gave us 3 gift cards this year. It was wonderful. We are very grateful. We would also like to thank the UT Barnes and Noble Bookstore, who also gave us multiple gift cards. We'd like to thank the Honors College, the College of Arts and Letters, the Communication Department, and Dr. Mojisola Tiamiu, Vicki Kroll. And I bought some too because, well, it's my job. Of course I'm going to. Long live the book. Long live our right to discuss freely. And long live our right to be rowdy and to bring up topics that people don't want to discuss. That's very important. Our whole democracy is built on this idea of exchanging our thoughts and the free flow of information. It matters greatly to our way of government, our civilization, and I think to our personalities too. So I'm glad you're here. And now I'm going to give away some stuff, always fun. Tell me the name of this book. Write it in the bubble, and our monitors will determine who answers first. This is for one of those $20 gift cards from Barnes and Noble. In 1963, a group of citizens led by the anti-communist study groups in Columbus, Ohio, asked the school board to ban this classic from George Orwell for being too controversial. So what book by George Orwell has been banned? About a totalitarian government. Anybody else want to give a clue?
Okay, there's an answer on there are 2 answers, a couple of answers on YouTube.
So who's the first one?
That's Margaret Watt,
Margaret Watt, and is she right?
1984.
That's it. Now listen, Zoomers and Facebookers, you get a bonus. Just think of this, during midterms, you get a free answer. So get those little fingers typing. The answer is 1984. So the first one who types it in on those other 2 places is going to get a gift card.
We had the first answer on Zoom from Gigi McNamara.
Okay. So Gigi got a gift card. Gigi's one of my colleagues in the comm department. And how about Facebook?
No answer on Facebook yet.
Oh, come on, Facebook. 1984.
Oh, okay. Somebody just did. There is a bit of a delay between our Zoom feed and the
That's
social
true.
media, and then it looks like Facebook is the last one to get it today. But Mary Zeller also replied 1984. So
Okay. So we have winners, Maddie, Margaret, and Gigi. Now,
Gigi just said that you can give her card to a student.
okay, so do we have a student in Zoom? Somebody look and see.
Tiffany Ware.
Okay, so Tiffany, you get a gift card. Thanks to Gigi, Dr. McNamara. And monitors, please make sure you get their email addresses and their names spelled for me, because I'm not always good at spelling people's names when I don't know them. Now we get to give away a door prize. Oh, let's see, we have garage doors and French doors, screen doors. I know, who needs a door, huh? Well, fortunately, our friends, Coach O'Brien and Adam Simpson at the athletic department are very good friends. When I came on campus, Marge Simpson at the UT Credit Union asked me why I was wearing all the buttons, and I told her, and I said, this is my first year and I don't know how to get door prizes. She worked with me on my pitch. And then she handed me a ruler off her desk, this is 23 years ago, and said, next year we will have more. Now you go out there and you get some more prizes. People will give you stuff. And you know what? She was right. When we're in a room, I have 45 to 50 people around the campus and the community who give us stuff. Because we're online and because of the procedure we have to follow to give anything away, we only asked some we knew would be able to do it in a hard budget year, and some of our closest and dearest friends. The Honors College, for years, they emptied the second floor of their building, and we did our event there. Now they're in a smaller area and they don't have a big room for us, but we have been working with Honors and they've had our back for probably 15, 16, maybe 17 years. But marvelous support there. And Barry's Bagels, well, when we were still in Thackeray's bookstore at Westgate, and I was taking students to do the graveyard shift of their all-night readathon, Barry's would bring us hot coffee and fresh bagels in the night. So they've been with us the whole 23 years. So just wonderful. And Phoenicia, Ed at Phoenicia is very supportive and always helps us any way that he can. He always gives us some meals to give away. So we are blessed. You know what? The UT community, the UT family, they're just vital to this operation. We could not get along without all of our campus partners, supporters, cheerleaders, all the people around campus. The campus police give us stuff too. It's amazing how many people on that campus give us stuff. And I'm always humbled a little bit by it, and I'm very grateful. And to get the store prize, I tell you, you're going to have to be real smart. This is a hard question. And the question is, who terrorizes the bread aisle at the grocery store? It's a joke. Who terrorizes the bread aisle at the grocery store. Any answers? Well, the original was Han, and the answer is 2 words. And the first part is the original one's first name, and the second part rhymes with Han. Mother Goose and Grim the cat and Mother Goose and Grim is named this too. Is this one too hard? Think of a notorious Han, and then think of a bread aisle and something that rhymes with Han, and you will have your answer. Can nobody get it? Really, truly, have I stumped you? Shall I just tell you the answer? What do you think? Is it time for me to tell you the answer, and then we'll have them race to see who can type it in? Well, I thought this was really funny. Attila the Bun terrorizes the grocery store, the bread aisle.
Yeah, somebody did guess it on Facebook, Attila the Bun.
Yay!
Just at the same time when you were.
Marvelous.
Oh yeah, and then there is just somebody came in from YouTube as well.
Well, so who are our winners?
So Facebook, we have Maddie Zeller, and on YouTube we have Mianese K.
Yes, and you guys will get the spelling for me. So we have Maddie Zeller and Mianese K. So we need to get one on Zoom. So,
and we need those email IDs as well from the students who answered correctly.
This is right. We have to have the email IDs so that we can contact you and tell you where to get your prizes.
You mean the email address, right?
Yes.
My niece, her real name is, that's her YouTube name, but her name is Maya Krieger.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, then she will just, or you can send it to me, Sumitra, so we know who gets it. So we have somebody from Zoom. Well, I guess then maybe, is there one, who's on the iPad? Is that Dr. Hussein on the iPad?
Yes, that's his.
Okay, well, do we have one student here with us?
Well, we have Gigi McNamara. I think
she's a professor in our department.
Okay, sorry.
So somebody check the Zoom feed for me, and
nobody in Zoom answered that one yet.
No, but is Tiffany Ware a student?
Well, that was 1984, but that was the previous answer.
Well, if she's our only student, I think I will give her the prize. Is that okay with everybody?
It is. She's the only student.
So Tiffany, you're doing just great. Would it be that all your midterms will be this easy? All right, we have given away prizes. I want to show you something, and I hope I don't disappear again, but I would like to show you something. Can you see it?
Yes.
Let's try this again. See if I can get it so you can see it.
We saw it. I saw it.
Can you see this proclamation from
Yes.
the mayor, from his honor. Whereas the mayor of the city of Toledo is my privilege and responsibility to recognize his causes and events that warrant attention. And then down here, he says, for the past 23 years, the University of Toledo's Banned Books Coalition has aided in the fight against censorship by hosting a Read Banned Books Day vigil during Read Banned Books Week. So today, by proclamation from our very own mayor, it is officially in Toledo, Ohio, Read Banned Books Day. So thank you, Mayor Wade Katzowitz. We really appreciate it. That, now if I can get the control bar back here. How did I do that the last time? Any suggestions? All I'm seeing are your pictures. Oh, I'll try escape.
I think you close the window or minimize the window with 3 buttons in the top left corner.
I've got chat and pin video is what my 3 buttons tell me.
On the window that is displaying the proclamation,
Yes.
do you see?
Oh, here we
Now,
go. You mean
yeah,
that?
you can just close that window. Click the red button there. Yeah.
Yay, we're back. This is all so new. I apologize that I don't know more, but I'm learning, and I tell you what, it is worth it. It's worth it so that we can celebrate. So that's what we said this summer was, how are we going to do this? And then my lovelies on the committee said, we can just do it virtually. And I kind of gasped, but I said, sure. And we are doing it virtually. And I showed you that proclamation. You know what? People all over the country and in Mexico and Canada and some in Europe now too, we're all celebrating Banned Books Week with the American Library Association. We're all doing different kinds of events, exhibits. We're all doing our best to give a shout out for books. Give every book a chance. Read on.
Give every book a chance.
And in the spirit of giving every book a chance and reading on, I think we'll move on to our next program. Our next speaker has come to everyone since we moved on campus. She loves our program, our event. She's a great supporter. And every year she finds stuff new to tell us. And she's sort of become our expert on children's literature and issues of censorship in children's literature. And so, without further ado, please let me announce the magnificent, the marvelous Dr. Sharon Barnes, Chair of Women and Gender Studies. And she's talking about 20 years of censored children's books.
Give every book a chance.
Give every book a chance.
I'm sharing a PowerPoint, which is not typical for me. My students will attest to my lack of technology skills. How does it look for you?
It's great.
Beautiful.
Looks great.
Okay, excellent. Good thing that PowerPoint will design things for you. I am talking about, yeah, it's been 20 years for me, and I was trying to figure out if that was the beginning because I must have been at Kent State when you were at Thackeray's. I didn't know about that. Thank you to the committee and Paulette especially, and for the fabulous agenda you put together for all these years. It's been so educational and so fun. And it is really one of my favorite events as well. I'm a less good cheerleader, but I'll do my best. And of course, celebrating our love for reading and our right to read and share information freely is something that we, maybe it's age, but I certainly take it less for granted all the time. So happy to stand in solidarity with everybody else celebrating our magnificent right to freedom of speech. It is a pleasure. I want to dedicate my time today to two really dear friends of this event, especially Glenn Sheldon and Rain Arroyo. Glenn was my colleague in University College, and he's been a longtime supporter of this event. And I'm fairly certain he's the person who recruited me to become one of these merry pranksters. And I'm grateful to him for that. And his partner, Rain Arroyo, who died in 2010. I mentioned in the Q&A on Dr. Hussein's session that it was Rain who sparked my that conversation about the right for people to say things we find offensive. So, and I'm definitely still puzzling that one out. So thank you and dedicating this to Rain and Glenn. And my agenda is to say a couple of things about myself and then about banned books generally. That's a little thing that I've done since I started participating in. Then a few highlights and maybe lowlights about what I've learned about censorship of children's books over the years. And I have to say, I have very few conclusions to offer, but hopefully there might be some good questions. So that is not a picture of me, but a few of our fantastic troublemaking students. And as Dr. Kilmer said, I'm the chair of Department of Women's and Gender Studies. And we are a department really interested in oppression, and censorship of minoritized people is certainly a part of what we look at and what we talk about in our classes. So the department has been a longtime supporter of this event as well, and are grateful to. So as chair of the department, I'm happy to extend our gratitude on behalf of all our faculty and students as well. I've been on the faculty for 20 years here, and I'm honored, as I said, to be a part of it. And I've done children's books almost every year since I started with The Color Purple, and somewhere in the mid-range there, I did a memorably horrible year on pornography. And then I returned to children's books, I think at Paulette's urging, but it's just become a little opportunity to touch base with what's happening with children's books year after year. So I certainly feel like it's been an educational experience for me. I'm very, very happy and lucky to share it with you. So before I start talking about the children's books, I want to talk a little bit about what we mean when we say banned books. And I think this image kind of says a lot about what we think it means. But I do think banned books may be a little bit misleading in terms of the complexity of what actually happens. So sort of some background about that, or some concepts related to that. The banned books list that the American Library Association brings out every year is books that have been formal written complaints filed with a library or a school requesting that the materials be removed because they are offensive. So that when we talk about banned books, that's what we're talking about. The Banned Books Week started in 1982 when librarians noticed a sudden rise in such challenges and started sharing that information with each other, and the Office of Intellectual Freedom created this week. And it's something that we've been celebrating for 23 years, as Dr. Kilmer said. So challenges, as I noted, are an attempt to remove, a formal request to remove materials or restrict access. Sometimes it's not remove it completely, but just require parental permission or have it in a space that's not available to everyone, based on a group or a person's objections. A banning is when that actually happens, when the book is removed or restricted access to other people. So it's not just that the person doesn't want it, but that they don't want others to have it. And I think that's the big distinction, that the challenge is, you can always just not read the book, right? But that you think other people should not read the book as well. Censorship, then, that term to me is closer to the banning than to challenging, because this is an actual change in access, so that people are removed from the books are removed from the shelves, removed from people's ability to see it. Sometimes it's more like removal from a reading list. As I mentioned, restriction by grade level, requiring parental permission for a child to check out a book, for example. That decision being made by a governing body or an authority. I think when we think of censorship, we typically think of the government prohibiting our speech. And so to the extent that a school is a government or a library is a government, that would be the case. But other types of censorship occur as well, like vandalizing pages, tearing pages out, individual people just removing a book, or hiding the resources. And then, yes, actually burning them does happen as well, sometimes in symbolic gestures. It does actually happening. And in the contemporary moment, again, referencing Dr. Hussain's talk, I wonder if we might actually consider spreading false information, a form of censorship as well, sort of making information harder to sort or sift. I suppose there's probably another name for that. Next I want to talk a little bit more about banned books generally, the sort of journalist questions. How many? There's probably between 2000 and 2020, probably around 10,000 challenges and or bans. In 2019, the ALA reports 377 challenges, up from 347 last year. 566 different materials, again, not just books. On the question of what, not just books. So 62% of the challenges were toward books, 15% of the challenges, and this is 2018, were for programs or events. Interestingly, the drag queen reading hours have been targeted quite a bit. 10% targeted databases, magazines, films, and games. 6% targeted artwork and displays in libraries or institutions, and 7% targeted social media, access to social media and things like that. Drag Queen Story Hours, as I mentioned, have been targeted along with LGBTQ content generally. I was surprised, I think, over the years of doing this research, how often it's removing books from reading lists. Because in a reading list, a parent can say, no, you can't read this one book. So to me, it makes no sense to remove a book from a reading list, which denies other people the opportunity to read it, even if you don't want your kid to read it. Challenges, you can see my fabulous PowerPoint is not changing, so sorry about the boring slide. It's usually parents who top the list. This past year, or 2018, the year that I had data for, it was 32% were challenged by parents, although I've seen it, I think, even 10 points higher than that. I feel like I remember one year it was 42%. Next, almost always second is patrons of libraries. So people who come into a library and find something offensive and challenge it. After that, and that was 33% this year. Following those two large groups, school boards and administrations, 13%, librarians themselves or teachers at 10%, political or religious groups at 6%, elected officials 3%, and students at 3%. So a variety, and I would say in the last few years that I've been studying children's books, I've seen more involvement of support for challenges by outside political groups like American Family Association, organizations like that who would fund someone, particularly with if lawsuits are threatened. And I don't have information about that. I don't know if Dr. Kilmer does, but I would be interested to know if we're seeing more lawsuits around removal. Where? Public libraries 59% of the time. 23% in school libraries, 14% in schools generally. And again, I think that would be more like reading lists for a grade or for a reading competition. Only 3% in academic libraries, like more like university libraries, and 1% in special libraries, such as like prison libraries, things like that. And I'll say more about that later. Why are books challenged? As you can imagine, for all kinds of reasons, including things you might expect, like people feel they're too sexually explicit, or they are vulgar in some way, inappropriate to an age group. You see a lot. Profanity. More surprising reasons would be anti-police sentiment, or maybe not surprising to you, religious viewpoint. In terms of my observations about children's books, I would say a lot of it is linked directly to LGBTQ content, whether they articulate the reason as that or not. This year, in the 2019 data, 8 of the top 10 challenged books were challenged or removed for LGBTQ content. The only one of the 2 that did not have LGBTQ content was The Handmaid's Tale, which is a book that's been around a while, which is kind of fascinating to see it back there on the top of the list. Books are challenged on more than one ground, of course, and as the ALA says, from all quarters and all political persuasion. So it isn't just one community that targets texts as being offensive. And I think that was a surprise to me when I delved into this research. And especially when the same book is challenged from sort of what you would consider traditionally left or traditionally right perspectives. And I definitely have some examples of that. Any year's information, the data that I just shared is definitely not definitive. Not all challenges lead to books being removed. Frequently, they are not removed. And having a book removed from one library doesn't mean it's removed from everywhere. So if you think of that burning book, a book doesn't just disappear around the country because one school or one school district has decided it isn't appropriate for their community. So that's a good news. Even if forces of censorship win in one area, it doesn't win everywhere. And in my study, what has been really heartening is that when a challenge happens, the response sometimes promotes even more sharing of the material because there's publicity. And so you often have a lot more people being exposed to the challenged book. And I think that's also good news. The bad news, I would say, is that the ALA estimates that for every challenge that's reported, 4 or 5 probably remain unreported. So a few years ago, they said that roughly 85% of challenges go unmarked. So that means could be almost 2,000 materials challenged and removed that we don't know about. And certainly that level of potential censorship, I think, should be alarming to all of us who value freedom of speech and freedom of information. And I think if you think about these numbers, this I think would also count as bad news. You can imagine how many times someone just pulls a book and throws it in the garbage and nobody notices. Or a principal tells a librarian to pull a book. Or a librarian looks at a book that's raised controversy and says, I'm not even gonna order that book because I don't want to deal with the uproar that might happen. So there's a lot of complexity in terms of how censorship actually works, and certainly self-censorship is a part of that as well. Lucky for us, librarians are a rambunctious group overall and really fight to keep books on shelves. As a women's studies professor, I'm really interested in systematic oppression. So censorship for me is a really foundational issue. And certainly the interest includes minoritized people. And that really led me to focusing on children's books and particularly LGBT content in children's books. And it started with a book called And Tango Makes Three. And the book, well, actually it started with, that's right, it started with Harry Potter. I was a fan of the Harry Potter series, and I think Dr. Kilmer told me that it was being challenged. So I had to look into what the story was there. And it really, since it was released, the first book, which you can see on the left there, it rose not just to the top of the list into the top 10, but to the top 50 challenged books ever. Which is a much bigger deal in terms of the number of challenges. And I saw in the research for this year that it's back on the list, number 9 this year. So Harry Potter, since it came out, has been in the top 10 challenged books. And as you might expect, it's challenged for promoting the occult. And if you've read the book, it's true they are witches and wizards, but in terms of like actual pagan or whatever version of occult religion you think that represents, I think it's maybe not accurate. This year, Catholic Church in Catholic school, pardon me, in Nashville, Tennessee, banned and removed the Harry Potter books from their libraries for referring to magic and witchcraft, for containing actual curses and spells, and this is a quote, that risk conjuring evil spirits into the presence of the person reading the text, and for characters that use nefarious means to attain their goals. So Harry Potter sparked my curiosity, and then just because of a particular representation that I saw, I started looking at representations of indigenous peoples, and I wanted to emphasize two. The first time I looked at it, I looked at the book on the top, The Indian in the Cupboard by Lynn Reed Banks. And my argument about this book is that it's the stereotyping in the book, and this image is really a perfect example of that, is a form of silencing and de facto censorship that, especially when indigenous writers struggle so hard to get material into the press, a book written by a non-indigenous writer about a character who is from some generic, random, not representing any actual indigenous nation, through really stereotyped sort of, one of the critics calls it Tonto-ese, mixing dress and traditions, is a really unfortunate way of censoring really necessary information about indigenous lives and cultures. That the author was also not indigenous herself makes it sort of doubly offensive in my argument there. And of course, the fact that the film grossed $35 million when it was released, it just sort of adds insult to injury as well. The other text in terms of stereotypes and challenges is the title was cut off here, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, and that's by Sherman Alexie, indigenous writer, American writer. Was the second most challenged book in 2018. It's been on the top 10 almost every year for the past 10 years. And it means a lot of people find this book troubling. It also won the National Book Award for Young People's Literature in 2007. So this is a really powerful book. And it's interesting to me, especially because it's been challenged on the left and the right. This is one of those books that has been challenged for many really annoying numbers of references to masturbation, but also it's been challenged and challenged this year by a middle school student, one who wasn't even in the class that was reading the book, because of the references to masturbation. In other years, it's also been challenged for stereotypical representation of indigenous people from the left, because two of the characters are, the main characters' parents are both alcoholics. Sherman Alexie has responded to the criticism and the challenges by saying, I write books for teenagers because I vividly remember what it felt like to be a teen, facing everyday and epic dangers. I don't write to protect them. It's far too late for that. I write to give them weapons in the form of words and ideas that will help them fight their monsters. I write in blood because I remember what it felt like to bleed. So that's Alexie's response there. And this is what I started to talk about earlier. And this is about LGBTQ content in children's books. And this is really, really the heart of most of the challenges that I've seen. And Tango was one of the first children's books that I looked at because I was so fascinated by this story, which is of two chin-strap penguins that is actually based on a true story. And you can see in the image, it's an award winner as well. But it was two male penguins at the Brooklyn Zoo, Central Park Zoo. And they coupled for many years and would build a nest and roll a rock into their nest and sit on the rock and never produce a baby penguin. And so one of the zookeepers one year, another penguin pair produced 2 eggs that the zookeeper knew they would not nurture both and raise both baby penguins. So he put one of the real eggs in the so-called gay penguins nest, and they sat on it and produced a baby penguin. And so it's sort of based on a true story. It's a picture book, and I think that raised a lot of alarm, and it was challenged because of its homosexual content. And one of the objections as well, and one I sort of found fascinating, was that it doesn't tell the whole story because after this successful coupling and the gay family. It was interestingly challenged for being anti-family, despite there's this great little queer family. But one of the male penguins left the penguin family and mated with a female penguin. And so the objection was that they didn't tell the whole story, which should include that there is in fact an ex-gay penguin story that needs to be told. So of course it's about promoting the homosexual lifestyle in humans through the gay penguins. The other two that I've talked about over the years, I Am Jazz is an autobiographical kids books by Jazz Jennings, who is a transgender girl who wrote this book really to help spread awareness. Like that was her intention, to create space for people to talk about trans issues. And it's been challenged, offensive viewpoints, offensive language. It will promote confusion in children. And a school district in Illinois got support from the Liberty Council, interesting name for people who want to challenge books, for putting it on their anti-bullying list, that they didn't think it should be there. It promotes non-factual, radical, and controversial assumptions about gender. The reading of the book was canceled as a consequence of that, but again, always with good news and bad news. Students at a local LGBTQA alliance partnered with parents and the local public library to sponsor a public reading. The Human Rights Campaign flew in, the illustrator, and gave free copies of the book out. So a really big public awareness campaign happened, and over 600 people participated in that reading, and 50 nationwide readings happened of the book as a consequence. Finally, and I guess I'm getting close to being out of time here, George, Alex Gino's 2015 book, middle school book, also about a transgender youth, has been on the top 10 since it was released, and is top this year. It's also won many awards: Lambda Literary Award, Stonewall Award, Children's Choice Debut Award, Gold Medal for Juvenile Fiction. In 2017, the school board in Wichita, Kansas decided against including it in its libraries, citing references that are inappropriate for children. Administrators prevented librarians from using funds to purchase the book. And again, the flip side, good story, Alex Gino went on Twitter and raised enough money to buy the books for every district, every school system, every school in the district in under an hour. Last year, a group called 1 Million Moms, which is an offshoot of a group that I consider a hate group, the American Family Association, called on its followers to contact Scholastic to try to demand that they discontinue printing the book. Two Oregon school districts decided not to participate in the state's battle of the books because it was an option. And the consequence is that none of their students got to participate in the battle of the books. So negative experience there. And so in terms of having great wisdom for you, sorry, gonna totally let you down there. I think I've already made it clear that challenges happen from a variety of sources, left and right, in a variety of ways texts are challenged, and to a variety of institutions and libraries. And I have this picture of the rockets with pride because I took a picture of that flag flying over, the pride flag flying over the student union that I talked about with Dr. Hussain. But so my question is, what do we do? How do we protect the speech of the ideas that we hate, especially if it's intolerance? How do we this is not parting wisdom. This is a question and a struggle for me. How do I protect speech that I hate? And what is my responsibility there? And I guess that's a question I'll leave for you, just to leave a little bit of time for questioning, and just to say thank you. And intellectual freedom is the right of all of us. And in a democracy that appears to be struggling, we're really at a moment where we need to think deep and hard about what our values are and how we live them. So happy to be here in this great space for that. Happy to answer or take comments, questions, or try to answer a question if you have one.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. So who has a question for Sharon? Let's check the social media.
I can stop my share too, so we can.
Yes, that would be probably a good idea.
Oops, not that. There we go.
So who has a question for Sharon?
Well, so far I'm not seeing any questions of any kinds at the present.
Well, I think you certainly covered a lot of territory, and it's very important. I have a question that I think might be good. So how do these books that you were talking about, particularly the last three, how do those books benefit the children who get to read them?
That's a great question. I think, and I was thinking about this when Dr. Hussain presented as well. I think that, because he was talking about dialogue and real dialogue involving equals. So my initial answer is, exposure helps us understand other people. So if you don't know anyone who's transgender or LGBTQ, reading a book helps you understand their experience, their humanity, etc. And of course, it really helps people, like I was saying about Rain and I reflecting on seeing the pride flag, that we never thought in our lives we'd see such a thing. The lack of media about LGBTQ people is still a problem, but not nearly the problem it was, when I was growing up, when there were literally no LGBTQ characters in any version of media that I was aware of, I should say. So I think a big benefit is recognition, validation, exposure, but I also feel like the opportunity to humanize others and engage with dialogue is a benefit to everybody. What I wanted to say was, when I know someone who's different from me, I really am able to hear and see and understand their experience a lot better. And sometimes the only way we're exposed to difference is through books if we don't live in a diverse community, for example, or something like that. Do you have thoughts about that, Paulette, in terms of the benefits that I didn't mention?
No, I think you covered them just great. I think it's important for us to get to know each other, and often that is through books. It's important for children to see characters they can identify with, who are like themselves in some ways. So I think you did a nice job of answering that question. Do we have any other questions or comments? Anything in Facebook?
No.
Samoji, you have your hand up. Can't hear you.
Thank you for reminding me to unmute. Sharon, thank you so much, as always, for a great presentation. Always have things that I have to think about and things like that. I know that you had posed a question to the end, at the end of your presentation, but I want to rephrase the question I had asked Dr. Hussein, and this time from the point of view of discussions around LGBTQ issues, where some folks want to use some, maybe the scriptures also, or evolutionary theory or whatever, to maybe justify their prejudice against maybe that particular group. How would you handle such situations so that, again, you are not ending up quarreling with a family member or maybe a best friend and things like that?
Well, I think it probably depends on the, well, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the relationship and the argument that someone would raise. I mean, I think if they're saying it's anti-scripture, I think, fundamentalist readings of scriptures. Can you hear me, Moji? You froze up there. Fundamentalist readings of scriptures can be used to oppress all kinds of people. And, the scriptures promote stoning and all kinds of things that we would not agree with today. Hanging people on a cross hopefully is not something we would want to see anytime soon in terms of the Christian traditions. So I think it would depend, and I think lots of cultures have survived for thousands of years with LGBTQ people in them. So I think the sort of evolutionary argument, I don't think the human race is going to die out because LGBT people exist. And in fact, I think we kind of have the opposite problem in terms of population. So, maybe LGBTQ identities are a consequence of evolution. I don't know that I would make that argument at the dinner table with a conservative person, but you could.
Yes.
Do you have thoughts about that I'm not sharing? And then just to answer, Tiffany, your question about where you can get the list, the American Library Association website posts the lists, and there are boatloads of really interesting material there. And that is where most of my research came from this time around.
If you go to our coalition page, you will find all kinds of resources. Arjun has put together an amazing list of places, including the American Library Association, where you can find more information about book banning. Well, Sharon, thank you so very much. We really do appreciate it. And there's time maybe for one more question. Is there one more question somebody would
Sharon,
like?
hi, Sumitra here. I don't know if this is a question or a comment or a mixture of both, but to the reference that you made in the end as you ended your presentation, and to follow up on the conversation that we were having in Dr. Hussein's presentation as well. One way I think that we can accept, it's by accepting intolerance is by disagreeing with it. We can convey to the person who is being intolerant that we disagree with their views, and that could be possibly one way. But the question I have, that I grapple with, is where do we draw the line? There can be disagreements verbally, but if somebody's action becomes like a physical or a psychological or an emotional abuse, like how do we address that is my question, and something that I think about.
Me too. I think in that conversation about the Confederate flag, for example, Rain and I were saying that we felt like that created harm to some students, and that the harm of their speech gave us a space to say, no, this would not be acceptable. So our debate really then went back to, the people might be harmed by the pride flag, maybe less directly. They're made uncomfortable. If it violates their religious principle or something else. And so is that harm great enough to stop the expression? So that's, I think, where we got into ground that we just couldn't get ourselves out of. But I do think, having the opportunity to provide counter speech is really, really important. And I think, especially when we talk about trying to be, for example, for me, trying to be an aspiring anti-racist ally, or trying to be an ally for communities I'm not a member of, to be in spaces where I can amplify voices who are making those cases, or stand myself and make the case if need be. That's really, really important. So thank you very much for articulating that. And thanks again for allowing me to participate. It's such a pleasure and a joy. Thank you.
Well, Sharon, we just really appreciate it, Dr. Barnes. Thank you so very much. Now, we have to move a little bit because our next speaker has another engagement, and we have to kind of watch the time a little bit. But I would like to say that the code word for this last session is tango. So to get your credit for attending the session, if you are a student in any of our social media venues, the code word is tango. And please, moderators of the two venues, type that in to the chat so we're sure students understand. TANGO, like the dance, and like the penguin. That's where the name came from. Now, if you're just turning in, coming into our, I just got an email, I'm sorry. I leave it on in case the speakers email me, but it distracts me a little bit. If you're just turning in into our venue, we are the 23rd annual BAM Books Week celebration. And we're going to give away a couple of door prizes. And then we are going to hear from someone who has joined us many, many times over the years, Dr. Renee Heberly. So we'll just give away a couple prizes. The first one is a $20 gift card. And I'll read you a little description. And as soon as you recognize the book, please type the title in the chat, and you might win this $20 gift certificate to Barnes & Noble. So here is the clue. In this novel, society bans all books, and firemen burn books and the houses where they were found. TV rules and literature is nearly non-existent. So in this novel, society bans all books, and firemen burn the books and the houses where they're found. Everybody watches TV. Literature is nearly extinct. So is intelligent discussion, more than likely. So what is the name of this book?
Okay, there's an answer on YouTube. It's Fahrenheit 451.
That's exactly right. So who answered?
Spencer Lowe.
Spencer?
Spencer Lowe, L-O-W-E.
Okay, so then Spencer, make sure we get your email address. Do we have one on Facebook?
Not yet. Maybe the delay.
Okay, we just told you the answer. Fahrenheit 451. Now during midterm time, you won't get answers given to you like that very often. So take advantage of it. And you will get a $20 gift certificate. Get those little fingers just a flying. Or big fingers, for that matter. So, do we have an answer? There is a little delay between the forums. Thanks to Arjun, Sumitra, and Ali, we are on 3 venues. We're in a Zoom room, then we bounce to YouTube, and we bounce to Facebook. So I'm very proud of my coalition this year, because we were determined to celebrate the right to read and think freely. 23 years. Give every book a chance. Give every book a chance. Do we have a winner? I see Tasha's there. Oh, I see Maggie. Hi, Maggie. A friend of mine. All of you are friends of mine, but she's from a distance, so that's really kind of surprising. All right, no winner? Who's monitoring Facebook?
No winner, but we probably need to get Renee off. No.
Okay, this is how it is. We're going to let Renee start because she has.
Okay.
other-
There's one from Liam Walsh.
Okay, Liam Walsh. And do we have a second one
No,
from
just
either venue?
no, just Spencer and Liam.
Because we don't have any students in the Zoom room right now.
Yeah, but I think this is probably a time to move on to the.
Pretty soon we should.
Liam is in the classroom here with me, driving me nuts. So I'll tell him congratulations from everyone and let's move on.
You're in a classroom?
I am. I'll explain in a minute.
Well, tell one of the other ones while they're talking, here's how it's going to be. Listen up. The first one who on YouTube or Facebook writes the answer, Fahrenheit 451, will get a copy of the book. And we're going to have Dr. Heberly start her presentation, and she's going to be talking to us this afternoon about reading rights in prison. So we're very fortunate to have Dr. Heberly, who is a wonderful person and does a lot of things on campus. I guess I'll just let you talk, Dr. Heberly.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And I'm so impressed with the work that you all have done to pull this off this year. And if I keep looking up over my shoulder, it's because we have a couple of big screens on. So Paulette's on the big screen right now in my classroom. I am in a classroom because we start class at 2:30, and I'm also fortunate to have 3 students in here with me who came a little early to listen and to participate. So that's my situation, and that's why I'm sitting here in a mask, because I am in the classroom. So I'm going to present today, and again, thank you very much for everyone that makes this possible each year. I am going to share my screen, I hope, and show you, offer you a PowerPoint that will be some text and some lists and some ideas and about accessing the right to read in prison. So those are my identifying characteristics here on campus with my email. And if you're interested in having a copy of the resources that are in the PowerPoint, please just email me. Paulette knows how to get in touch with me, all the organizers do. if you would like a copy of the PowerPoint, I'd be more than happy to send it on to you. So I put right to read in prison because it is not assured. Once you are convicted of a felony and sent to a state prison or a federal prison, you typically are stripped of rights. We have a phrase that we use to describe that as being civilly dead. Your civil rights, your civil liberties are then very much restricted. That doesn't mean that you don't have any rights at all. And so much prisoner rights litigation has gone through our courts over the last century. And in one of those pieces of litigation, Thurgood Marshall, who we should all remember in these days of turmoil on the Supreme Court, Thurgood Marshall said in Procunier versus Martinez in 1974, when the prison gates slam behind an inmate, he does not lose his human quality. His mind does not become closed to ideas. His intellect does not cease to feed on a free and open interchange of opinions. His yearning for self-respect does not end, nor is his quest for self-realization concluded. If anything, the needs for identity and self-respect are more compelling in the dehumanizing prison environment. Another quotation that I use as an epigraph for this is from PEN America. This is an organization that defends the right to read and write, and also has a massive history and a very important history in the context of soliciting and making possible prison writings and making them available to the public. And from a report that I refer to in this talk and have referenced at the end of the talk, they say, with over 2 million Americans incarcerated, the book restriction regulations within the United States carceral system represent the largest book ban policy in the United States. Now that is in aggregate, and what I'll be doing is disaggregating some of these issues because, as you know, we have 50 different state prison systems and a federal system. And then we have jails and we have detention centers. And so the kinds of policies that are in place in all of those places tend to shift and change across time and space. So this is a kind of 101 on how people who are incarcerated get access to written materials. People who are incarcerated can purchase private subscriptions, and these will be surveilled in the mailroom and governed by statewide lists. That's not me, is it? And prison libraries exist in most prisons, controlled by statewide prison policy and the discretion of particular prison staff. There are educational programs of the kind we have at the University of Toledo called the Inside Out Prison Exchange programs, and the controls then are also the same as in the libraries in the prison for the most part. There are book donation drives, and we'll be talking about that more later. All because all written material, and these are controlled because all written material is assumed to be a vehicle for contraband into the prison. Donations can often only be made through certain vendors, and many systems have attempted to ban all used books coming in, making it quite cost prohibitive for nonprofits or just ordinary people to send books into prisons. People who are incarcerated can make private orders. Amazon is one of the largest vendors that is allowed to send books into prisons. And if you go to some websites now, and I find this extremely problematic, Amazon is sort of the vendor. So it's become quite a boon for Amazon to have to be one of the only approved vendors for prison book drives. We shouldn't ever forget that there is always within the context of the carceral institution, the passing around of written literature. I think of it as a kind of underground railroad for literature inside prisons. Some of our students sometimes would try to get their friends inside to take an interest by simply leaving a book that they'd been reading on a table in the day room and waiting to see who goes over and looks at it and picks it up and then going and have a conversation with them. Part of my goal as an educator is just to get as many books inside as possible because we often have more leeway to bring things in as educational texts. And so I just try to bring as many in as I can as an educator, and then they get distributed through this kind of underground railroad. And also there is now, of course, in the digital age, electronic devices not connected to the internet, but to a private company called JPay that facilitates digital educational opportunities. So those are some of the ways in which incarcerated persons can get access to written materials. So how are decisions made in these systems about who gets access, who can do what with written materials inside prisons? Among those of us who do educative work, or really any kind of volunteer work, a common theme is that whether a policy is in effect or not on any given day, sometimes it depends on who's working the desk. Whether that be the sort of dress code that is in force or what kind of materials someone lets in. So there's just a lot of differences among staff people, which is not, they don't go way out of line or anything, but it can just be very flexible, we'll say. Decision-making and policy-making in prisons is somewhat random, therefore. So those making decisions are often folks with very limited prior or off-the-job training. So prison by prison decisions about written materials reflect the everyday biases and fears we all may have about those who live in prisons, and may reflect some lack of awareness of the context. For example, when I was teaching the Massachusetts prisons, I had a colleague who wanted to bring in a book by Andrea Dworkin that was titled Pornography, and they would not let them bring that book in because they couldn't distinguish between being about pornography and being pornography. And of course, Andrea Dworkin is one of the world famous anti-pornography activists and yet I was able to bring in a book called Wretched of the Earth, which is by Frantz Fanon, which is an argument for violent revolution against colonizers. So go figure. So there's sort of the everyday kinds of awareness of the people making the decisions may mean that some books get in and some books don't for very odd reasons. State legislatures have occasionally weighed in on what and how written materials get into prisons. However, for the most part, they leave it to the state prison system and its administrators to figure out. Politicians and the courts these days have left a lot to those who run prisons in terms of decision making. So common reasons for prohibition. So what I do is I list the reasons, and then I give an example of a book that probably we would not want to have restricted in a prison, and then sort of how that gets extended to other larger general categories. So if it has any sexual content, nudity, or obscenity, well, on the face of it, that sounds right, but that means that The Color Purple by Alice Walker might not get inside a prison, and almost anything by a feminist that refers to sexual violence or sex in general. Depictions of violence or language perceived to encourage it. So that might be My Infamous Life, an autobiography of Mobb Deep's prodigy, which is a kind of redemption tale by John Prodigy Johnson. And really almost anything written by Black men about life on the street. So a third one is depictions of criminal activity or language perceived to encourage it. So almost any detective novel would be subject to restriction. Depictions of escape or language perceived to encourage it. So any book with maps. And there was even a case with a map where the map of the moon generated a restriction on a text coming into prisons, any kind of map. An encouragement of group disruption or anti-authority attitudes or actions. So the new Jim Crow, mass incarceration, the age of colorblindness, infamously has been banned by many states at different times. And then, of course, the general category would be almost anything critical of race relations or law enforcement. So the final one would be racial animus or language perceived to encourage hatred. So Race Matters by Cornel West has been banned, and anything by Frantz Fanon, except if an educator like me brings it in, or other critical race theorists might be banned. And again, these are all mights. These are not on, these might be on some lists, but these are the kinds of texts that have made it into the press and the media when prison systems have attempted to restrict them. So each state has a director of prisons. They are typically appointed by the governor, which means that policy often changes with changes in executive leadership. So even without this change at the top, prison policies, not unlike the educational policies, is constantly changing and shifting as administrators attempt the impossible task of caging thousands of persons in miserable and underfunded conditions. So what does that mean? It means that policy about censorship of materials is hardly at the top of their priority list. For all who work in prison, the less that comes in that is outside of absolute prison control, the better. It takes a lot of staff time to review each piece of mail, to flip through the books for contraband, to check the content, and to decide whether something will be prohibited. So sometimes materials will simply get tossed into the trash because there's ambiguity. and staff will typically err on the side of security. So the statewide system will make policy, but wardens also have enormous discretion to decide what materials will come in. And each prison will be somewhat different depending on its security level and attitudes of those who work there. The staff at any given prison also has enormous discretion. When an incarcerated person takes a class, a book or an article may be allowed in for educational purposes, but, and I've had this experience with my students inside, an officer, when tossing a cell, may confiscate a book on security grounds, and the incarcerated person will have few avenues by which to reclaim their property. So I just wanted to give you a really good example of some of the carelessness in terms of policy making on the part of statewide prison systems. And here the Seattle Times reported that the Washington State prisons instituted a ban on used books coming into prison. So, usually policies like this and laws are in response to some kind of problem that the staff of the prisons have brought to the attention of the director. So this particular policy banning used books was based on the problem of contraband being smuggled in through the pages of books. 17 incidents were found to be driving this concern. And so you have to listen and read carefully to see how this worked. 17 incidents were found to be driving this concern that the policy would impact 17,000 individuals in the Washington State prison system. Of those 17 incidences, which were identified using prison date of incident reports, so the staff person fills out an incident report, they put it on file, somebody goes through them all, finds these 17 incidents, and makes a policy banning used books. So there's something written on the page, and it says, and the Seattle Times reported that 3 were not indeed about, of those 17 incident reports, were not indeed about books carrying contraband, but about incidences reported by Officer Booker. And so the data collection process of the incidences identified Officer Booker as being about a book that had an incident attached to it carrying contraband. Or it was about someone doing something while being booked. And it was about a report that someone found a shank on a bookshelf. And so the means by which they assessed the data to try to find the problem that they were solving by banning used books was indeed quite careless and flawed. So while those who administer and work in prisons bristle at intervention, they also respond to it, as shown in the stories of the ban of the New Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander's book in New Jersey, and the rescission of many hastily formulated policies across the states, like the one in Washington State. However, reactive public pressure, I say reactive public pressure, is never enough, because it's really hard to know what happens inside prisons and difficult to raise consciousness broadly enough to raise a stink when we do learn. The courts are almost useless. The Supreme Court in Turner versus Safley in 1988 basically conceded the prerogative of prison administrators as the experts on security, which includes restrictions on books. In Ohio, the governor appoints the director of the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, so it is difficult to engage her or them on any consistent basis because, of course, they change with the leadership in the governor's office. So I'm going to leave with a few questions. One is, what is the point of reading in prison, right? And part of the arguments that we make about having more open policies rather than limited policies is to ask the question, is it radicalizing to read or is it redemptive? And of course, I would argue that it's both, and that both things are probably good. The tension surrounding content-based censorship is as much about how prison officials measure or assess the security implications of content. Authoritarian systems will always fear subjects who learn to read and write independently and thus think independently. And prisons are authoritarian systems. They exist, however, within a constitutional republic. We consent to the presence of these many authoritarian systems, and therefore we must take responsibility for what happens inside in the name of our security. So when I'm thinking about this, my conclusions, if we're to change our prisons, and most people these days think that they need to change no matter where you are in the political spectrum, we must know what people who are incarcerated have to say about the conditions in which they are held, from the most normal prisons, which create their own special forms of misery for those incarcerated, to the most obviously brutal prisons. Part of the reason I teach classes in prison is that I wish to make it more likely that those incarcerated will find their voices, develop an analysis of their situation that is not just about their individual failings or choices, and gain the confidence to express themselves publicly, not only about prison conditions, but about whatever it is they find to be important. This is done in part by reading. A few years ago, I presented here at Banned Books about why we should read what those who are incarcerated write. But writing comes with reading. These facts and policies and ideas I've shared today is the flip side of that presentation. I argue we must make it possible for those who are incarcerated to read widely. It literally makes all the difference in the world within the prison environment and to us as citizens. Most people in prison have had little to no access to formal education prior to being sentenced to prison. Many are autodidacts, doing their best, and some doing very well with the limited resources available to self-educate. But free speech is not so meaningful if one feels one should not or is not able to speak for lack of language, education, and access to different perspectives. Reading, as we know, enlarges one's perspective and offers the vocabulary to express oneself. Encased in cages or barracks side by side with only one another and the staff to engage with on a daily basis, reading becomes not just an escape, which is good, but a necessary means by which thinking beyond the immediate circumstances can happen. This helps with re-entering a world that has changed radically since they went in. But it also helps improve the culture inside prisons by keeping minds alive and engaged beyond the misery being imposed by the structures and systems of mass incarceration. So getting books into prison will not end mass incarceration. And I struggle with, and I feel very ambivalent about helping prisons appear to be doing a better job. Further, staff consider educational volunteers as helping to keep the peace by keeping the incarcerated population busy. They call it keeping the priz biz. And I've heard that phrase ever since I started teaching in prisons in the 1990s. But as long as fellow citizens, incarcerated citizens, and those who are being held in detention who are not citizens are being caged, we must offer some means by which they can still have a life of the mind. It's an obligation that was articulated by Thurgood Marshall. It will, no matter what the conditions in prison, continue to make some kind of difference, even while we work to reduce our reliance on law enforcement in prisons to resolve political and socioeconomic issues that our current system is either ignoring or allowing to fester. So these last few slides are some nonprofit organizations, some websites taking donations if you're interested in doing that. There's no organization that I could find that is specific to Northwest Ohio that is supplying books to prisons or jails, but there may be one. But if anyone would like something to do, that would be an awesome project. One of these is an article, this here is an article about a high school student in Stark County, Ohio, who founded an organization that's very successful to getting books into the local jail where he lives. And these are the statements and reports regarding the policy, some of which I drew on in order to put together this presentation. And these are just a few media resources, and I know you can't copy all this down right now, but like I said, I'd be happy to send this to anyone who asks. These are just some of the media coverage of some of the bans, some of the efforts that have been made, which I covered very briefly in the very beginning of my talk. And that appears to be the end of my discussion. So I don't know if we have other questions or not, because I don't know what time it is.
We are delighted to have you and some students with us from your class. This is great. So, are there any questions for Dr. Heberle? Any questions for her?
I don't have a question, but more just a comment. Your talk got me thinking about the politics of titles. And you know how like when somebody's just, you know, you're talking about the people who are supposed to choose whether or not these books go into the prison, just merely looking at a title, and for some of them will dictate whether or not prisoners get access to these books. And it was interesting because the other day I have a book and the title is Talking White Trash. And the book, one of my friends recommended it on Facebook and it actually got banned. The title got banned on Facebook because it had the words white trash, which the point is to obviously not promote it, but rather to counter it. But it just made me think about, you know, the censorship that emerges from just a title in and of itself. And so I don't know, I really enjoyed your talk, and it got me. I mean, I didn't know about this, so thank you for sharing what you did. I just made me think a lot about the politics of titles and how maybe we just need to be very neutral. I'm not sure, but just quite a dilemma. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, maybe what we have to do is put a colon after white trash saying, this book discusses white trash critically. It does not promote the, maybe we have to write the book on the title page and then it'll be clear. I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to change any titles, that's for sure.
I know, but yeah, you're right. I mean,
it's like the book on pornography, right? I mean, couldn't Andrea Dworkin name it something else, for heaven's sakes?
Exactly. That's exactly what got me thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's a really good point. And so when you have an overworked and understaffed and undereducated staff working on this, then you're just not going to get good results in terms of the kinds of decisions being made.
Yeah.
It's the problem that we see often in these challenges and banning. A bunch of people will get all upset and they haven't even read it. None of them have read it. So they don't even know what they're talking about. And yet they want to deny others the right to read it. You can't tell by the title really what anything's about. To look inside. Thank you, Tasha, for the comment. Do we have some more questions for Dr. Heberly?
Nothing on social media, not yet.
Not yet. Oh, for heaven's sakes, politicians, go away. I have to have my phone and my email in case presenters contact me with issues about getting into the Zoom room. But sometimes
Liam?
the noise.
I'm putting my students here on the spot to see if they have any questions.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
We do really always appreciate. I had a question for you, though.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any kind of book in particular that incarcerated people want more than others?
No, I think that they want to read just like any of us want to read fiction, mystery, intellectual books. One of the things we did through the Inside Out Prison Exchange Project is do a book drive for the library at the Toledo Correctional Institution. Has not always been particularly well managed. And also people will use books as contraband. I mean, that's not a myth, that's actually true, people do. And people will keep books because they won't return them. And so libraries sort of churn through books a lot, and it's very difficult to manage a prison library in general for all kinds of reasons. So what we did was create a particular library for the people for the Inside Out Prison Exchange Project, where anybody that's taking a class or is taking a workshop with us has access to it and can check out books, and it'd be a little bit more under control than the prison library itself by the inside people themselves. By the inside students actually kind of kept track of who had the books out and who was taking them. And we found that that worked a lot better because when they held each other accountable for the books coming back to that particular library, and what we just had a huge filing cabinet full of books that were donated, and they were all what we wanted. Our goal was to have books of the kind of books that that young people will be reading in their first few years of college. And so we took donations from, textbooks and also fiction and a lot of, again, the kinds of books you'd be reading in a liberal arts classroom or in a college classroom. So that has worked really well. And when we went to maximum security, it became a little bit harder for the men inside to access it and to actually control the terms on which the books were taken and given back. But we found that putting the people inside in charge of the lending, it worked really well to do that. And so I can't really say that there's any particular kind of book, because in my experience, I mean, I had a student in Massachusetts who is an expert in classics, and he drew he painted a genealogy of the Greek gods on his cell wall that a scholar from the classics department of the University of Amherst came and took a picture of and used to educate his students. So people do remarkable things if they get access to things inside prisons. And that's sort of an outstanding example, but you find all kinds of different levels of the use of intellectual and just fun materials as well. I mean, so.
Well, I think too, if you can set up some kind of way where they're checking books in and out, it's more like something normal.
Mm-hmm. Well, the library does that, but people don't return them, and it's hard to enforce.
Yeah, I bet.
And correctional officers will take them, and so prisons are messy places, I tell you, to try to keep anything for all kinds of reasons.
Well, does anybody else have a question or a comment here?
Liam? Liam has a question from the classroom.
If most of the books coming into prisons and being exchanged are through kind of these classes in the prison or volunteers coming in, how does something like COVID and there not being volunteers in classes in person impact like the flow of books into a prison?
That's a great question, how COVID has impacted this. COVID has impacted prisons by shutting down all visitation and all volunteer programs. And so right now there is very little passing across the prison walls in the shape of anything, never mind books. So we have a lot of work to do to build back up both the inside out and educational programs once the pandemic is passed. In fact, I got an email literally 1 minute before we started this, that we're going to be able to start our programs up again inside Toledo Correctional, but we can only have 5 people in a room at the same time. So we have to split that between inside participants and outside participants, and it's just going to be complicated, but at least the flow can start again, and we're going to try to keep our momentum going. So that's an exciting thing. That was an exciting piece of news, and we'll bring as many books in as possible, because that's my goal, is to always bring as much written material in as I can.
So
thank you, everyone. I have to start my class because they're all sitting here wondering why we're talking about prisons and books instead.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hemerly.
All right, thank you all.
We appreciate it. Anybody wanting, okay, you are going to your class. We really appreciated it. And thank you so much for participating this year.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And again, if you would like, please just email me. I can send you the PowerPoint with all those resources and ideas. Thank you very much. And I'm going to sign off. Goodbye.
Bye now. Oh, we're getting a thunderstorm, kind of appropriate for a freedom of expression event, since our words can create thunder too. So, did we get another name from the last one? We get another student on Facebook or Zoom for my monitors. Did that happen? Did we get a second?
No, just those 2.
Okay, well then we'll try to give this one away down here. And the code word for people wanting to get credit for attending is choke hold. It's one word, choke hold. It's the name of a book about policing and about trying. This book was written like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's trying to get that police action banned. It's kind of interesting. So chokehold is the key word for this time. And I would say to you, if you're just joining us, welcome. If you've been here for a little while, we are going to give away 2 lovely prizes, another gift, $20 gift card, and it's time for us to do that, I think, without further ado. And so I'm going to read a description, and as soon as you recognize the title of the book, type it in the chat bubble, because the first one to get it right will get a $20 gift card from Barnes and Noble. And we owe a big thank you to the provost. Go Provost, rah, rah, Provost. to the UT Barnes and Noble bookstore. Yay, BNN. To the Honors College. Rah, rah, HC. Long live HC. To the Communication Department. Hip, hip, hooray for COM. And to Dr. Mojisola Tiamio. Is that a great woman? Rah, rah, rah. For Vicky Kroll, Vicky Kroll. Rah, rah, Vicky Kroll. Hooray, Vicky. Vicky's been giving us books since we started. She has retired now from UT, but she's still a big sponsor. And I gave some books, which I should. So we have books to give away. Now, here is the way you win. I'm going to read you this description. And when you can tell what book it is, get those fingers flying and write down the answer. First one gets the book, at least the book card. This 2017 book stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for 50 weeks. In it, Star witnesses the police shoot her childhood friend. This book was banned for inappropriate language and encouraging distrust of the police. It was written as part of the Black Lives Matter movement by one Angie Thomas. So what book are we talking about? It's a more recent book. Two of our presenters talked about it on Monday and read us passages from it. So come on, my brainy ones. Who knows the answer? Do we have anybody in YouTube or Facebook who knows?
Nothing so
None
far.
yet.
Star, the main character, sees the police shoot her childhood friend in this book. And this book is being widely read right now because it mirrors some of the things, unfortunately, going on in our society. Does anybody know the title? I tell you.
You want to give them another clue?
I could try to give you a clue.
Was it the title of our first presentation this time?
Mm-hmm. And it was the book that they read from on Monday. Our first presentation, first book discussed, and first book read from. And her son read with her. He did a really nice job. It was Dr. Mungo. Another clue? Well, let's see. Angie Thomas wrote it. The first two words are the hate. So you have to finish the title. I just gave you, now this is midterm time, so you should appreciate being given these kinds of tips. The first word, the first two words are the hate.
On YouTube, we have Spencer Lowe with the right answer.
Spencer has the right answer.
Yes.
And what is the answer?
The hate you give.
That's right. The hate you give. So then how about YouTube?
Nothing on YouTube yet, but YouTube is in a different time zone.
No, I think this was from YouTube, right? Spencer Lowe is from YouTube.
Sorry, I meant
Today, Facebook is the one that seems to be lagging.
Yeah,
for some reason.
Facebook is behind.
Facebook is pretty quiet right now. We only have 2 people watching right now.
Well, if either of them want a $20 gift card, all they have to do is type in the hate you give, and one of them will get it.
Let's just hope those 2 are not me and Arjun.
Maybe.
Well, geez, I have prizes I can't give away.
Ali's saying I can type that in, but we don't count him. We won't count him. He is being so greedy. He keep asking me if he can type.
Well, we only have.
Might have a student here on Zoom.
Okay.
And then she has a question too. How do you enter? You can just type it in here in the chat.
So who's the student?
Promise Cross.
Oh, well, Promise. All right. Zoom, we can let Promise have it. Promise Cross just won. And YouTube, Spencer Lowe. Are there more people on YouTube?
Let me see.
I'm glad we got like
There
100.
are six on YouTube.
All right, want to use 6 if it's not all the rest of us. Easiest thing like shooting fish in a barrel, which would be a mean thing to do, so I'm not suggesting it. But just write in the hate you give and you can get a $20 gift card. Okay, so we have nobody then. We'll move on. Not much I can do, but move on. We don't have winners. All right, so I have a joke here, and you can win. We didn't give away the gift bag last time, so we can try to give away the gift bag now. And so the joke is a real appropriate one for this time of the semester. Why do trees hate exams? Why do trees hate exams? Okay, so long live the book. Long live the book.
Long live the book.
Give all books a chance. Give every book a chance.
Give every book a chance.
This is our celebration of the right to read and think freely. It is one of the 4 best days of the whole year. And I am so glad that you are here with us to enjoy it. And I'm also glad that some people will tune in and watch the recordings. I think that's pretty cool too. Something that we can't do when we're in the room. So technology can be amazing.
Okay, there's an answer on YouTube, and that's from Spencer, because they get stumped.
Very good, Spencer. You're cleaning up this afternoon. Okay, so how about on Facebook?
So on
Spencer,
Oh, there's an
Spencer is
answer
one of my students.
because they make a paper out of it.
And who, because they make a paper out of it, huh?
Well, yeah.
On Facebook.
I think it's funny too.
It is funny. How many are on Facebook?
Sorry.
How many
Oh,
students?
there's 4 now, so I know it cannot be me.
So this answer is from Manazza. She was my junior in Pakistan and a very dear friend. So she's watching it from Pakistan.
Well, let's get, how will we get, I guess we have to mail it to her?
I don't know. I don't know. And she has recently been selected for a scholarship, like to Turkey. She's going to be there for her PhD in communication.
Is
So I
there
think-
a way to send electronically, like something that you would open on an iPod or iPad or some other device, something that you can?
I don't have anything electronic right now.
Okay. What we can do is like the best I can do is I can take her gift when I go back next year.
Yeah.
That'll work. All right, she can have it. What's her name? She gets a gift bag. What's her name?
Is
That's,
Moon
it
Kaleem
says
Siddiqui?
Moon Kaleem Siddiqui. Yeah, she called herself Moon on Facebook. That's her pet name.
Okay, so send me her name and an email saying what I'm doing with that gift bag, and we'll do it that way. And so then we've got Promise. Did you answer the question here?
You did.
And what did she say?
Oh, the past.
Promise in
Oh.
Zoom. Well, the answer is stumped.
She said it gets stumped.
That's good. Then she wins too. So now I have another round of gift bags that I could give. We have people who can win them. Or are we down so low we don't? Well, this is the 23rd annual UT BAM Books Week Vigil. We started in the bookstore. I took some students there with me, and we read in the overnight. They did a 24-hour readathon, and we read from banned books. And it was fun, and we always had the graveyard shift. And then when we were done reading, we'd walk across the street and get breakfast at Papa John's. I'd buy them breakfast. And that was lots of fun. We did that, I think, 3 years, and then we brought it to the university. So UT has been involved in the BAM Books observance for 23 years. And when we were at the bookstore, we worked with the ACLU and Thackeray's, and it was great fun. Barry's would bring us hot bagels in the middle of the night and coffee, and it was just great fun. And people who were working that weird shift and were finishing, we weren't in there by ourselves. People came in all night. It was really interesting because they would come in when they finished their work shift and chat with us a bit, maybe buy a book, and it was a fun time. Then the insurance company just threw a fuss. They didn't want that store open all night. So that was the end of it, which was kind of bittersweet, but then we got to move to campus, and after a few years of struggle, we were able to establish ourselves a little bit and here we are today with the logo and doing it virtually of all things. So it has been a joy to watch it grow over these years. And I would like to thank my committee, since I have a couple minutes and I can do that. I would like to thank very much. These people work with me, and if it weren't for them, I would be lost. They help me in too many ways to even begin to list. And when it came time to doing this virtually, they were just a godsend because I do not know these things. And I would like to thank then Arjun Saberhal, who's also editing for us and getting these, when we have presentations, then later he edits and you can just watch the presentation. And we're really grateful for that because then that makes it possible for more people to enjoy what we're doing. And thank you to Ali Imami, who's been a wonderful, wonderful person. He's a genius. He knows all about technology, and he set up our network so that everything is syncing for us across the three.
The genius is dancing in front of me.
He's
like,
yay, Ali! Yay, Arjun!
Ali's literally dancing.
And we also need to give a cheer for Sumitra. Rah, rah, Sumitra. Way to go. She has sometimes explained to me in email stuff that I didn't quite understand about technology and would take too long to go into in the group meeting. And she is always very helpful with stuff. And of course, Laura Mitchell is on our committee too. She's a community person now. She was one of my MA students, my master's students, and she's a great help. We're very happy to have Laura on our committee, on our coalition. And Sadia Farouk, well, I can't begin to say enough. But did we cheer Sumitra? Rah, rah, Sumitra! Rah, rah, Sadia! Sadia is from Pakistan. She and her husband, Ali, whom we've just put Ali on the coalition. We didn't even ask him. We just put him on because we need him. And they're from Pakistan. He's doing a medical degree. She will be doing a degree at BG in the fall. She is helping me with all kinds of stuff. I met her in 2013 in my ethics class. So we are really blessed to have Sadia with us. And we have Josie, who's taking care of her children who are under the age of 3, and she'll be back probably not next year, the year after, when her kids get a little bit bigger. So thank you, Coalition, for all you do. Every year, we wonder what's going to happen next. And with the climate the way it is in our country right now, we need this event more than ever. When the two men who hope to be the next president can't be civil to one another and can only call each other names and shout, this is a sign. Well, it's a huge embarrassment for our country, but it's also a sign that civility is in danger, and with it, freedom of expression. We need to respect each other. We need to treat each other with dignity. And if we can't listen to one another, then we can't learn and grow, and we can't compromise. Also, all of the stuff about fake news, it is troubling because if people do not trust the news, Where are they going to get their information? Are they going to get it from narcissists or from social media, from people who are just making it up? So these are times when we need a BAM Books vigil, especially. Every year there are things going on that make me think, well, it's the First Amendment. The battle for the First Amendment is never over. Last January, some students at a university in Georgia destroyed books after a speech from a guest speaker, and other students were shocked by it and did not approve, but it still happened. These things still do go on. We are in a time when we need to think about what being a citizen means. And we need to realize how much our freedom of expression means. And we can't have freedom of expression if we don't give it to others. It's something that's being lost right now. Freedom of expression doesn't exist in a vacuum. We need to give the right to speak freely to others as well as to ourselves. I see Risa's getting ready. I bet her family will be there soon for our final presentation. And on this rainy afternoon, I am so very glad to be here with you and to be celebrating BAM Books. And I would give another door prize if we had enough people in any of the venues. Do we have enough people anywhere to give another one? Doesn't look like we do.
We have 3 in Facebook, 9 on YouTube. One of them is me on each side.
Okay, so I guess then maybe we will not worry about giving another one right then. This is the 23rd annual BAM Books Week Vigil. I am Professor Paulette D. Kilmer, Dr. K to my students. I teach in the communication department, and I started this event 23 years ago, and I coordinate it now. I get lots of help from my coalition members. We are very grateful to the whole university community for the support that we get. Usually when we're in a room, we have stuff from 45 to 50 different sponsors from around campus and in town. But because of the COVID crisis, we were not able to give out that much stuff this year, and the budget cuts, we had to I can't even think of a word for it. Horrible budget cuts. So that would reduce how much people would be able to give to us this year too. So we were very, very appreciative when the athletic department, the UT Federal Credit Union, the Honors College, Barry's Bagels, and Phoenicia all gave us stuff we could put in those gift bags. And so, hooray for our sponsors. Being online has meant that we've had some hundreds of views of Facebook, where people are coming in later and looking at programming. So our numbers this year are going to be different. I think our session count is going to be the lowest in our history. Now don't do that. My alarm clock went off. I don't know why I would never set my alarm for 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And if you hear the smoke alarm in the background, I changed 4 of them. It was hard, but I did it. I got on my step stool and I did it. But there's one I can't find. I have no idea where it is in here. Eventually I will see it, but I've even followed the beeping and I can't figure out where it is. So it's
We really can't hear it, Paulette, so don't worry about it.
That's good. Well, it's because our topics are so hot and our entertainment is just smoking. So of course, we would expect Ed and Risa, Clint and Jude to set off the smoke alarm with their presentation. And I think we will get started pretty soon with their brilliant band tunes. I'm just delighted that they're here. I think it is a wonderful gift. And right now, let's do a shout out. Yay, Ed and Risa! Rah, rah, rah!
Rah, rah, rah.
It's for all the years of music they have brought to this event. I told Ed one day, I would like to close with some music. Do you know anybody who would do it? And he said, I would. And since then, either he or Risa or both of them have been giving us wonderful concerts. We are so blessed. And the name of their program this afternoon, and they have their amazing, talented boys, Jude and Clint, with them. So this is going to be good. And I don't know if, is there some way I can put them on the whole screen? Since they're performing for us.
Arjun can probably do that once they start. He'll do that. He'll put it on speaker view at the host side.
Okay. We are
They
going
have to unmute. They have.
All right, we unmuted.
Please don't touch the camera.
We unmuted.
All right, but now our camera needs a little adjusting. Just a sec.
All right, Jude.
Don't touch the
We are
camera.
very thrilled to
Start
bring to you.
So everybody turns on off your mute, unmute yourself except for the presenters, the performers, and then that should bring them into the focus. I'll do that myself as well.
All right, so you know what else I think, Arjun? If you click the 3 dots in our square and you click Spotlight Video, that should help us be seen as well.
Can you see?
Okay.
All right, I think we're on.
Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thank you everybody for having us. Thank you, Dr. K. Thank you, Paulette, for having us every year. We always love coming out and celebrating banned books and independent thinking, especially now, but always. I'm Risa, and my husband Ed. Are you on screen?
I'm here.
And our 2 boys are joining us for the first time ever this year. So Jude is going to start us off on guitar. Ed's going to be on bass. I'll be on uke. And Clint is on the keys, which, let's see if I can show you. See? Hopefully I didn't mess up the camera too much. There we go. All right. So we have 3 songs to share with you today. And this first song is by Peter, Paul, and Mary. And it's from their children's album, Moving, and it's called Puff the Magic Dragon. And this song was banned in Hong Kong and Singapore because it was interpreted as a song about drug use and marijuana. People thought Puff the Magic Dragon was code for take a smoke of a marijuana cigarette. Peter Yarrow insists that this is the story behind the song. Peter Yarrow, who is Peter in Peter, Paul, and Mary. No, Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Peter Yarrow. He went to Cornell University, and one of his roommates was friends with Lenny Lipton, who, as it turns out, Leonard Lipton was an engineer, and they invited Lenny over for dinner one night, and there was a mix-up about the time. So Lenny got there and nobody was there yet. And before he had arrived for dinner, he had been reading some poetry, and he was inspired himself. And he was inspired to write this poem about a dragon. And it was Puff the Magic Dragon. And he wrote this poem on a typewriter, because there was a typewriter there. And then he forgot about it and left it there. And they had dinner. And then he left. And later, Peter found this poem in the typewriter and loved it and decided to turn it into a song. And sang this song for a long time, then joined Peter, Paul, and Mary, and they started singing this song, and it became a hit. And so Peter Yarrow tracked down Lenny Lipton to say, hey, I turned your poem into a song. And Lenny was like, what poem? And he, to this day, still gets royalties from this song as the creator. Both Lenny Lipton and Peter Yarrow insist this is really just a song about lost innocence. And at the Sydney Opera House, Paul Stuckey, who is Paul in Peter, Paul, and Mary, once did a fun little shtick where he put this song on trial. He put Puff the Magic Dragon on trial. And the audience weighed in by singing along, and everyone sang along. So case dismissed, just a song of innocence. So this is Puff the Magic Dragon. Start us off.
Yeah.
The magic dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Little Jackie Paper loved that rascal Puff and brought him strings and sealing wax and other fancy stuff. Oh, Puff the Magic Dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Oh, Puff the Magic Dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Together they were traveled on a boat with billowed sail. Jackie kept a lookout perched on Puff's gigantic tail. Noble kings and princes would bow whenever they came. Pirate ships would lower their flag when Puff roared out his name. Oh, Puff the Magic Dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Oh, Puff the Magic Dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. A dragon lives forever, but not so little boys. Painted wings and giant springs make way for other toys. One gray night it happened, Jackie cherry lane without his lifelong friend. Puff could not be brave, so Puff, that mighty dragon, sadly slipped into his cave. Oh, Puff, the magic dragon, lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Oh, Puff, the magic dragon, lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu.
No, just kidding. Okay. She just wanted to have a creepy effect, so.
Thank you for that, Clint. Thank you. All right.
All right, so I'm gonna just assume you guys can hear me from back here. Can you hear me? Are we good? Are we all good? Good, okay. So I take this, right? And the next song, here, you just hand it to me when you can. The next song we're gonna do, I've done before at band books, but since we're all kind of learning the songs as we go, I decided to redo. I decided to redo this one because it's a classic.
Yeah.
It's called Louie Louie, and it's also got one of the more controversial or kind of funny kind of band stories behind it. And it's a song that was originally written well before the controversial version was written in the 50s by Richard Berry. Not Chuck Berry, but Richard Berry. Can you give me a pic from over there? And Richard Berry is the guy who wrote Louie Louie, but the version that became a controversial was the version by the band The Kingsmen, who recorded it in 1963. And when it first came out in 1963, this version, it didn't get a lot of attention initially. And what happened was a Boston DJ heard this recording by this band, and at that time, this was before punk rock, but it was sort of one of the precursors to the punk sound in a certain way, because it was very sloppy. It was a trashy garage band sounding it just sounded really sloppy, and this DJ in Boston thought it sounded really so sloppy, and he loved it for that. And he had a thing he played every week called Worst Record of the Week, and so he played this on Worst Record of the Week, that part of his show. Can you all hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so he played it, and it became a hit. People, instead of thinking it was a terrible record, thought it was this really amazing recording. And it's funny because the story behind it is when the band, when they were preparing to record it, the night before, they went to kind of a teen rock club and they played a 90-minute version of this song.
What?
And everybody loved it, and they went crazy for 90 minutes on this one song. And then they went to the studio and they recorded it, and the lead singer had to stand on his tiptoes in the studio to kind of reach up to the boom mic that was over his head. And he also had braces, and his pronunciation was really bad because he was screaming with these braces on with his head up. And that's what created this really famous unintelligible sound that the lyrics are really, really hard to understand if you've listened to the Kingsmen version of this song. And what happened was a rumor started going around that the reason the lyrics were unintelligible is he was totally changing the original lyrics and making it this horrible story about sexual things going on between the sailor and the song, and also the woman that he's singing about. That's in fact not what happened. But it got so controversial that the governor of Indiana banned the song in Indiana. And then what happened was the FBI opened an investigation into whether or not they were secretly saying all kinds of horrible things. And they determined that they could not distinguish what was being said in the lyrics, so the investigation was inconclusive. And ultimately down the road, the drummer admitted that there was a bit of profanity in the song, and when he was doing a drum roll at one point, he accidentally dropped an F-bomb. But you can barely understand it. It's in the 54-second mark of the song if you listen to it. Anyway, it's going to be an A, right? A? Is that where we play? A. So without further ado, Louie. And I'll be screaming it from the back here, and it'll be pretty unintelligible. So I'll be screaming it from the back here, and it'll be pretty unintelligible. You need to let them see.
No, I mean, I can see, I just can't
Oh.
be seen because.
Yeah, okay.
Move your body. Stop
That's okay.
covering me.
Okay, no, it's okay, guys.
It's about
This is
as
fun.
unintelligible as a rap song.
Why don't you stand up, Jude? And Jude, are you plugged in?
So pretty
Hey,
unintelligible.
Jude, let's plug you in, Jude. I don't think you plugged in yet, right?
Oh,
Jude?
Please be careful. with
Hold
that.
on. Kid politics going on over here, sorry.
And also tech difficulties. Clint, you're gonna have to wait till morning.
Here, come on, help. Need help? Let me see. Here, let go. There you go.
I'm going in.
All right, we're all good.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. You ready?
When you are.
Wait, it's
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. my lyrics at all. I was trying to scream over the instruments, but
Do it. I can't scream as loud as you.
anyway, so the next is we're gonna play My Generation by The Who. And My Generation by The Who, and Clint will be playing the keys and singing My Generation on this one. And this song came out in 1965. And like many, that's enough. And like many of the BBC songs out there, I mean, many of the songs that came out in the 60s, the BBC was banning it. The BBC has always been big on banning songs. It's like they're very, very famous for banning some of the best songs ever. And it banned My Generation because Roger Daltrey, this is the reason they said they ban it. Roger Daltrey in the song stutters on purpose for an effect. He says, people try to put us down. That's what he's famous for doing on the lyrics. That happened because he accidentally stuttered in the recording the first time, and they liked the sound of it. So they kept it. And the BBC said they felt the song was insensitive to people who stutter, and so they banned the song.
Although it makes them sound pretty cool, actually.
And yeah, it actually sounds very cool, the stutter in the song.
Ed, we can't see your head again.
Sorry?
You can't see your head.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Sorry.
I think
So,
your camera is this side, right?
yeah, can you hear me?
I hear you wonderfully, but I just can't see your head.
The camera is towards your right. I think.
All right. Okay. Well, can you see me now? Am I there?
Down, I can see
I'm-
you. No, I can't see Clint.
Okay, but I'm just telling the story, and then I'll get up and we'll move. And we'll be
Okay.
good. Okay. So so in '65, the BBC banned the song, and they banned it because they said the stuttering was disrespectful to stuttering people. And but I suspect, because I've seen Quadrophenia, the movie that The Who made, about that time when that song came out, and there's a scene in that movie where all these kids are dancing to it at a party, and when they get to the "why don't you all fade away" part, everybody in the room screams "F off." They scream the they drop an F-bomb. So I have a feeling that everybody suspected that "f" was going to end up spelling out a really bad word in the recording. Well, anyway, so the BBC didn't play it, but then the record sold like 300,000 copies really fast, and all these other radio stations started playing it. And so the BBC dropped its ban and brought it back. And so that ban wasn't very long lasting. Anyway, without further ado, we will now play My Generation.
So can we get Clint's head back?
It'll come back. Don't worry, it'll come back.
He's right front and center. You'll see him. And I'm going to move this so you guys aren't tempted to look that way, because that's better. Jude, watch the headstock. You're close to me.
Should I play 2 octaves or just one?
Do the 2.
People try to put us down. Just because we get around. Say do look awful cold. But not before 8 o'clock. It's my generation. It's my generation. Why don't you all just fade away? I'm trying to get what we all say. I'm trying to cause a big sensation. Just talking about my generation. It's my generation. It's my generation. My generation. My generation. My generation. My generation. Why don't you all just fade away? And don't try and do what we all say. I'm not trying to cause a big sensation. Just talking about my generation.
This is what
We opted not to smash our instruments like you do. Bring us home, Reese.
All right, well, we just want to thank Dr. K and the whole committee for allowing us to join you all in your living room, dining room, bedroom, wherever you happen to be. And we look forward to a time when we can all be together to celebrate banned books and also banned songs. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Well, thank you. That was pretty marvelous.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Fun. Good job. Does anybody have any questions for our musicians?
I want to thank the Fun family. Thank you, Jude. Thank you, Clint. And thank you, Ed and Riza. Wonderful presentation. I had a ball. Thank you. Enjoyed. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for having us. It was super fun.
Thank you, everybody. This was a lot of fun. It's lovely as usual. We had a lot of comments coming on YouTube as you guys were performing. So it's there in the Zoom chat. I've copy pasted it. So please do look at it.
Well, that's
Awesome.
really good. I'm really glad.
Check.
Really,
Thank you.
it's important to end our event on a high note. And you guys always bring a lot of spirit and joy. And the music is just a great way to close. So we close on a high note. Now, the code word for those of you students who are getting attendance credit, the code words are silent music. Silent music. So if the monitors could type that into the bubbles for the students so they can get their attendance credit. And I do have a $20 gift card, and I have a lovely gift bag. So I will read the description of the book. Actually, this time it's an author. And if you can identify the author, the first one to write it in either Zoom or Facebook or YouTube, all three, we're giving a $20 gift card. So here's the question. The author of Carrie, The Shining, Christine, It, and many other scary novels appears on the banned book list often. So if you know the answer, type it in and you can win a prize.
There's an answer on Zoom.
Yes.
It's a Stephen King F.
It is.
No, I know it was a type.
And on YouTube, Cyrus says Stephen.
Okay, so
Yeah.
who got it on Zoom?
That's Risa.
Risa got it on Zoom.
And Cyrus got it on.
I got it.
Our microphone's off, right?
I got it.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
okay, okay.
Clint who got it. I thought Clint was
Clint,
typing.
okay.
Okay, and on YouTube,
That was Cyrus.
Cyrus. And you guys will get me the email
And Raven Modine.
on Facebook. Okay, now this is the $20 gift card. And I also have a question here. And whoever answers it right will get a door prize. And we have lovely gifts from the athletic department, the Federal Credit Union, the UT Credit Union, Honors College, Barry's Bagels, and Phoenicia. So I'm going to ask you this question, and whoever answers it first is going to get a gift bag. So the question is, what do you call a fight between celebrity actors? What do you call a fight between celebrity actors. So who knows this answer?
We have an answer on YouTube. I mean, I'm sorry, on Zoom.
And what's the answer?
Star Wars.
Yes, right. Star Wars. And who got it?
That's Cyrus.
Promise Cross.
Promise got it. And who got it on YouTube?
Cyrus.
Cyrus. And who got it on Facebook?
No, nothing there yet.
Nothing there yet.
Okay, where do you want people to give their emails privately?
If they type it right on YouTube, I think Raven's asking the question. If they type
Privately.
it on YouTube, I've been copy pasting it and sending it to Paulette.
Yeah, private. If is there a private
I
way?
think she takes it off of YouTube then when she copies it.
Okay.
So it
That
doesn't
sounds good.
say.
So on YouTube?
And then she takes it out of the Bible, I believe is how we've been doing it. So I have another gift bag I can give away if we can try and see if we get some winners for it. Which dinosaurs are the worst drivers? So which dinosaurs are the worst drivers? They have short arms. They're the dinosaurs with the short arms. I thought that, now that's a real good clue. We have a winner yet anywhere? They are dinosaurs with short arms. Little bitty, great big head, and then they have these little short arms.
Promise on Zoom says T-Rex.
That's right. So Promise got it.
And Kristen on YouTube got it. Kristen Brooks, Tyrannosaurus Rex.
And then do we have anybody from Facebook?
No.
No Facebook. Well, Facebook, I tell you, the easiest time you'll ever have, especially during midterms, all you have to do is write T-Rex and you get a gift bag. I think one of you would do that. You can't ask for much easier than that. Long live the book.
Long live the book.
Give every book a chance.
Give every book a chance.
Give every song a chance.
Give every song a chance.
That's right. We are going to be closing very shortly. The 4 best days of the whole year. Woo hoo hoo hoo. This is the 23rd annual UT BAM Books Week Vigil. And I am Paulette D. Kilmer, professor in communication department, known by my students as Dr. K. And I hope I will see you next year, wherever we are. This has been a big experiment, and I thank all of you for tuning us in. And I thank our musicians. Let's have a round of applause for our musicians. What a great way to end. And as I end, please read on. and may the sun shine on whatever path you take. And so for this year, goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.